The bus wheezed to a stop at the edge of Willow Hollow, like it was exhaling its last breath, and Lena Hart stepped down onto pavement that hadn't been repaved since she left 7 years ago. Same cracks, same faded yellow lines, same everything. She stood there with 2 suitcases that held what was left of her city life, which wasn't much, and let the August heat press down on her shoulders. The air smelled like cut grass and manure, and something else she'd forgotten. Stillness. Not peace, just the absence of movement, like the whole town was holding its breath waiting for something that never came. The bus pulled away in a cloud of diesel exhaust, and Lena was alone. Not quite alone, actually. Across the street, Mrs. Hemming was pretending to water plants that were already drowning in their pots. But her eyes were locked on Lena like she was a crime scene. 2 stores down, Dale Patterson leaned against the hardware store window with his arms crossed. That same smirk he'd worn in high school, still plastered on his face like it had been painted there. She could already hear the whispers starting. Lena Hart's back. Wonder what went wrong this time. City didn't want her either, huh? Lena picked up her suitcases and started walking. Her childhood home was 6 blocks east, left to her when her mother passed last spring. She hadn't made it back for the funeral. Hadn't made it back for anything, really. There were reasons for that, good ones, she thought, but Willow Hollow wasn't the kind of place that cared about reasons, just results. And right now, the result walking down Main Street was a 31-year-old woman with nothing to show for 7 years of trying. The house looked smaller than she remembered. The porch sagged on one side, and the paint was peeling in long strips like sunburned skin. The lawn had gone wild, waist-high grass mixed with dandelions and whatever else felt like growing there. She could fix it. Eventually. First, she just needed to get inside and close a door between herself and all those watching eyes. The key stuck in the lock. Of course it did. She jimmied it, twisted, pulled, pushed, and finally the door gave way with a groan that sounded almost human. Inside, everything was exactly how her mother had left it. The floral couch, the lace doilies, the photographs on the mantel documenting a life Lena had spent years running from. She set her suitcases down and stood in the middle of the living room, suddenly aware of how loud silence could be. Her phone buzzed. A text from her former roommate in Chicago. "Hope you made it safe. Miss you already." Lena didn't reply. Cassidy meant well, but there was nothing to miss. The apartment had been too expensive, the job had been soul-crushing, and the relationship that was supposed to make it all worthwhile had ended with Jordan telling her she was emotionally unavailable, while he packed his stuff into boxes labeled with her label maker. The irony hadn't been lost on her. She opened windows to let out the stale air and found mouse droppings in the kitchen cabinets. Great. Tomorrow's problem. Tonight's problem was figuring out where she'd actually sleep, because her old bedroom had apparently become her mother's storage unit for every craft project she'd ever abandoned. Lena was elbow-deep in a box of yarn when she heard the knock. Not a regular knock. Hesitant, almost apologetic. She opened the door to find a man standing on her porch holding a casserole dish covered in aluminum foil. Tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a flannel shirt with the sleeves rolled up and jeans that had seen actual work. His face was weathered in that way that came from being outside more than in, and his dark hair needed a cut. But it was his eyes that stopped her, deep brown, careful, like he was always measuring his impact before he made it. Elias? The name came out before she'd fully processed the recognition. He nodded once. Heard you were back. Thought you might be hungry. Elias Boone. She'd known him in high school, though known was generous. He'd been 2 years ahead of her, the kid who sat in the back of every class and never raised his hand, the one teachers forgot about because he never caused trouble. She'd probably spoken 10 words to him total. Thank you. She took the dish. It was still warm. You didn't have to do that. I know. He shifted his weight, uncomfortable with the attention. Your mom used to bring me food sometimes. When my dad was sick, seemed right to return the favor. Lena had forgotten that detail, that Elias's father had died her senior year. Cancer, probably. Everything in Willow Hollow seemed to end with cancer or car accidents. I'm sorry about your dad. I should have, long time ago. He cut her off gently, not rudely, just efficiently, like he didn't want her carrying guilt that didn't belong to her. Anyway, casserole's chicken and rice, nothing fancy. Should be good for a few days if you refrigerate it. He was already turning to leave. Elias? He stopped, looked back. Do you want to come in? Have some coffee or something? I feel weird just taking your food and better not. He said it quickly but not unkindly. People talk enough already. Don't need to give them more. And then he was gone, walking down the porch steps and across the overgrown lawn to a pickup truck that had more rust than paint. He didn't look back, just climbed in and drove away. Lena stood there holding the casserole, watching his taillights disappear down the street, and wondering what exactly people were already saying about her that made coffee on a porch dangerous. She found out the next morning. The grocery store was a necessary evil. Lena had survived on airplane peanuts and gas station coffee during the trip, and her stomach was staging a revolt. She grabbed a cart, one with a wheel that stuck naturally, and started navigating aisles that hadn't been reorganized since the Carter administration. Well, look what the cat dragged back. Lena turned to find Melissa Crawford blocking her path, arms crossed over her chest like a bouncer. Melissa had been homecoming queen their senior year and apparently hadn't updated her personality since. Hey, Melissa. Heard you were back. Heard the city didn't work out so well. It was fine. Fine enough to leave? Melissa smiled, but there was nothing friendly in it. Must be hard coming back here after failing out there. Lena felt her jaw tighten. I didn't fail. Sure, honey. Melissa reached past her to grab a can of green beans, her wedding ring catching the fluorescent light. 3 carats, minimum. We all make choices. Some of us just make better ones than others. She walked away before Lena could respond, her heels clicking on the linoleum like little accusations. Lena finished her shopping in a fog, barely registering what she put in the cart. At checkout, the cashier, a teenager with blue hair and a name tag that said Riley, scanned her items without making eye contact until the very end. Don't listen to them, Riley said quietly, bagging the last item. The people here, they're just bored. Thanks, Lena managed. My mom says you used to be different before you left, said you actually had dreams. Lena wasn't sure if that was a compliment or an observation. I guess I still do, just different dreams now. Riley shrugged. Dreams are overrated anyway. I just want to get through senior year without dying of boredom. Lena paid and left, carrying her groceries back to a house that still didn't feel like hers. She spent the afternoon cleaning, trying to make the space livable, but every room held memories she wasn't ready to face. Her mother's reading glasses on the side table, the kitchen chair that wobbled because her father had never fixed it before the heart attack took him when Lena was 12. The pencil marks on the doorframe measuring her height every birthday, until she turned 18 and stopped letting her mother do it. By evening, she was exhausted and covered in dust. She heated up some of Elias's casserole, which was actually delicious, not that she'd expected otherwise, and sat on the back porch watching the sun set over fields that stretched to the horizon. This was a mistake, coming back here. She should have stayed in Chicago, found another job, another apartment, another life that didn't fit, but at least didn't feel like sliding backwards into a grave. You planning to do something about that lawn, or you just letting it go full jungle? Lena jumped. Dale Patterson was leaning against her fence, that same smirk in place. He'd been a linebacker in high school and still had the build, though it was starting to go soft around the middle. Haven't decided yet, she said. Looks bad. Brings down property values. There's 3 abandoned houses on this street alone, Dale. I don't think my grass is the problem. He laughed, but it wasn't a friendly sound. Still got that mouth on you. That's what got you in trouble before, you know. Always thinking you were better than us. You left. That says it all. He pushed off the fence. But, hey, you're back now, which means the real world chewed you up and spit you out. Welcome home, Lena. Try to fit in this time. He walked away whistling, hands in his pockets like he'd just won something. Lena went inside and locked the door. The next few days followed the same pattern. She'd wake up, try to make the house functional, venture out for supplies, and run into someone who felt obligated to remind her of her failure. The librarian, the mailman, the woman at the dry cleaner who'd never spoken to her before but apparently had opinions about her life choices. By day 4, Lena was ready to get back on a bus to anywhere else. Then the porch step broke. She'd been carrying in a box of her mother's dishes when the wood just gave way under her foot. She went down hard, dishes shattering around her, ankle twisting at an angle that made her stomach lurch. Shit. She sat there in a pile of broken porcelain, her ankle already starting to swell, and felt something dangerous building in her chest. Not tears, not anger, something worse, resignation. The kind that said this was exactly what she deserved for thinking she could come back here and make it work. "You all right?" Elias's voice cut through the spiral. He was suddenly there, kneeling beside her, his face creased with concern. "I'm fine," she lied, trying to stand and immediately proving herself wrong when her ankle buckled. He caught her before she went down again. "You're not fine. That ankle's already the size of a softball. We need to get you inside and elevated. I know you can." His voice was steady, patient. "But you don't have to. Let me help." There was something in the way he said it, not commanding, not pitying, just offering, that made her nod. He helped her into the house, supporting most of her weight without making a show of it. Got her settled on the couch with her ankle propped up on pillows. Then he disappeared into the kitchen and came back with a bag of frozen peas wrapped in a dish towel. "Keep this on it. 20 minutes on, 20 off. You got any Advil?" Bathroom cabinet. He was back in 30 seconds with the pills and a glass of water. Waited while she took them. Then he looked at the broken dishes on the porch and back at her. "I'm going to fix that step. And probably the rest of them while I'm at it. Don't argue, they're a hazard, and I've got the materials in my truck." "Elias, you don't—" "I know I don't." He was already heading for the door. "But I'm going to anyway." She heard him working for the next 2 hours. The sound of wood being pulled up, measured, cut. The rhythm of a hammer. She should have felt awkward about it. Some guy she barely knew doing repairs on her house while she sat there useless, but mostly she felt grateful. When he was finished, he knocked on the door frame. "All set. 3 steps replaced, 2 more reinforced. Should hold you for a while." "How much do I owe you?" "Nothing." "Elias. Lena." He said her name like it settled something. "Your mom helped me when I needed it. This isn't about money. It's about being a decent person. There aren't many of those around here anymore." Something flickered across his face, recognition, maybe, or just weariness. "No, there aren't." He left again, and Lena sat there with frozen peas on her ankle, thinking about how the quietest person she'd encountered since coming back was also the only one who'd treated her like she mattered. Her ankle took a week to heal enough to walk without limping. During that week, Elias came by 3 more times, once to check on her, once to mow her lawn without being asked, once to bring more food, a pot roast this time, with vegetables that had clearly been grown in someone's garden. "You don't have to keep feeding me," she said on that 3rd visit. "I know." He set the pot on her counter. "But I'm going to anyway." "Why?" He thought about it for a moment, his hands in his pockets, looking out her kitchen window at the fields beyond. "Because you look like you could use a friend, and I know what that feels like." It was the most personal thing he'd said to her. She wanted to ask what he meant, who had failed him, why someone who seemed so steady appeared so alone. But something in his posture told her not to push. "Thank you," she said instead, "for all of it. The food, the repairs, the lawn. You've been kind." That's not exactly a high bar in this town. She laughed, actually laughed, for the first time since coming back. "No, it really isn't." He smiled then. Just a small one, but it changed his whole face, made him look younger, less weighed down by whatever he carried. After he left, Lena realized she'd felt lighter too. By week 2, her ankle was functional, and her house was starting to feel less like a museum of her mother's life, and more like a space she could inhabit. She'd packed up most of the craft supplies, rearranged furniture, painted the kitchen a color that didn't make her depressed. Small changes, but they mattered. She also started walking, not to anywhere specific, just around town, relearning streets she'd once known by heart. The elementary school where she'd skinned her knee on the playground. The park where she'd had her first kiss with Tommy Morrison, who was now married with 4 kids and a beer gut. The diner where her mother used to take her for milkshakes every Friday. On one of these walks, she saw Elias. He was at the feed store loading bags into his truck. His shirt was stuck to his back with sweat, and there was dust on his jeans. He moved with an efficiency that spoke of years of practice. Lift, pivot, set down, repeat. No wasted motion. She was about to call out to him when she heard the voices. "That's Elias Boone, right?" A woman's voice coming from inside the feed store. "Yeah, still working at the Hendricks Ranch." Another woman, older. Has he ever—" Had a girlfriend? Not that I know of. He's just quiet. Too quiet, if you ask me. Probably doesn't know what to do with a woman. They laughed. Not cruelly exactly, but dismissively, like he was a curiosity, something to be observed but not taken seriously. My cousin tried to set him up once. Said he was nice enough, but there was nothing there. No spark, no ambition. Just a guy who'd rather talk to horses than people. Some men are like that. Simple. Not much going on upstairs. Lena felt her hands curl into fists. She wanted to march in there and tell them they were wrong, that Elias had more depth in his silence than they had in all their chattering. But before she could move, Elias finished loading his truck and drove away. He definitely heard them. She could tell by the set of his shoulders, the way he didn't look toward the store. That night she couldn't stop thinking about it, about how casually they'd dismissed him, how easily they'd reduced a whole person to a handful of assumptions. It reminded her of how people talked about her, the girl who left, the one who couldn't make it, the one settling for whatever scraps Willow Hollow would give her. She pulled out her phone and typed a text to Elias. "Thank you again for everything. You're a good person." She deleted it. Too formal. "Hey, want to grab coffee sometime?" Deleted. Too forward. "I heard what they said at the feed store. They're wrong about you." Deleted. Too invasive. Finally, she just sent, "Your pot roast was amazing. If you teach me how to make it, I'll trade you my mom's apple pie recipe." He responded 10 minutes later. "Deal. Thursday work for you?" Thursday worked. She spent the next 2 days overthinking it. This wasn't a date. It was a cooking lesson. A trade. Two people being neighborly. Except she changed her shirt 3 times and put on mascara, which was ridiculous because they were just going to be standing in a kitchen making food. When Thursday came, Elias showed up at 6 with a bag of groceries and that same careful expression he always wore. "Ready to learn the secrets of pot roast?" he asked. "I feel like there should be a ritual or something. Blood oath. Secret handshake." Just an apron and patience. They worked side by side in her small kitchen, and Lena discovered that cooking with Elias was like everything else he did, methodical, focused, completely present. He explained each step clearly, answered her questions without making her feel stupid, and didn't try to take over when she messed something up. "The key is low and slow," he said, checking the oven temperature. "People always try to rush it, but good things take time." "Is that philosophy or cooking advice?" "Both." She laughed. He smiled. The pot roast went into the oven, and they sat at her kitchen table drinking coffee while it cooked. The conversation drifted. Jobs, weather, the town's ongoing war over whether the high school needed a new football field or better textbooks. "What do you think?" she asked. "About the school funding?" "About anything. You never really say what you think. You just listen." He considered his coffee cup like it might have answers. "I think people talk too much and listen too little. Myself included sometimes. But I've learned that if you stay quiet long enough, you actually hear what's being said and what's not being said." "What am I not saying?" He looked at her then, really looked, like he was reading something written in a language only he knew. "You're not saying why you really came back, and that's okay. You don't owe me or anyone else that story." She should have felt exposed. Instead, she felt understood. "The city broke me," she said quietly. "Not all at once. Just piece by piece until I looked around one day and realized I didn't recognize myself anymore. I thought leaving here would make me someone better. Turns out, it just made me someone different, and not in a good way. And now? Now I'm trying to figure out if I can be someone I actually like while living in a place that's already decided who I am." Elias nodded slowly. "Yeah, I know that feeling." "Do you?" She leaned forward. "Because everyone here seems pretty sure they know exactly who you are. And they're wrong." "Are they?" "You're not simple. You're not lacking. You're just deliberate. Like you think before you act. Like you care about getting things right instead of just getting them done." He looked almost uncomfortable with the observation, like she'd seen something he usually kept hidden. "People don't know what to do with quiet," he said finally. "They need noise to feel like something's happening. So when you don't give them that, they fill in the blanks themselves. Usually with whatever makes them feel better about their own choices." That's remarkably insightful for someone they think has nothing going on upstairs. "You heard that?" "Yeah, at the feed store. I wanted to go in there and tell them they were idiots." "Why didn't you?" "Because you were already gone. And because..." She paused. Because I figured you'd heard worse. I have. He said it matter-of-factly, without self-pity. Been hearing it my whole life, used to bother me. Now it just is. Doesn't it make you angry? Sometimes, but anger takes energy, and I'd rather spend that energy on things that actually matter. Like making pot roast. He smiled a little. Or fixing broken porch steps for people who moved back home because the city broke them. She felt something shift in her chest. Not attraction, exactly, though there was that too if she was honest. But something deeper. Recognition. Like finding someone who spoke the same language in a town full of people shouting in dialects she'd never understand. The timer went off. The pot roast was done. They ate together at her kitchen table, and it was the best meal Lena had had since coming back. Maybe the best meal she'd had in years. Not because of the food, though it was delicious, but because of the company. The way Elias listened when she talked. The way he didn't try to fix her problems or offer advice she hadn't asked for. The way he just was. After dinner, he helped her clean up. Then he stood in her doorway, keys in hand, looking like he wanted to say something but wasn't sure if he should. "What?" she asked. "Nothing, just... This was nice, cooking with someone, talking. I don't do that much. We should do it again." "Yeah." He nodded. "Yeah, we should." After he left, Lena stood in her kitchen smelling pot roast and coffee and feeling something she hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. Not the desperate kind that made you chase things you'd never catch, but the quiet kind that suggested maybe, just maybe, there was something worth staying for. She didn't tell anyone about the cooking lesson, didn't mention Elias when she ran into people at the grocery store or the post office. But news traveled in Willow Hollow whether you wanted it to or not. Mrs. Hemming saw his truck parked outside Lena's house for 3 hours on Thursday night. Dale Patterson drove past and saw them through the kitchen window, laughing about something. By Friday afternoon, the rumors had already started. Lena Hart's taken up with Elias Boone. Poor thing, must really be desperate. He's a nice enough guy, but come on, she could do better. Could she, though? She came back here with nothing. Still, Elias Boone? That's settling if I ever saw it. Lena heard about it from Riley at the grocery store. "People are saying you and Elias are dating," the teenager said, scanning a box of pasta. "We're not dating. We're friends." "That's not what Mrs. Hemming says. She told my mom you had him over for dinner and he didn't leave until after dark. We made pot roast, that's it." Riley raised an eyebrow. "Sounds like a date to me." "It wasn't..." Lena stopped herself. Why was she defending this? Even if it was, why would anyone care? Because this is Willow Hollow. People care about everything because nothing ever happens. Riley lowered her voice. "For what it's worth, I think Elias is cool. He helped my brother fix his car once and didn't charge him anything, and he's way nicer to look at than half the guys around here who think they're hot shit." Lena couldn't argue with that. She texted Elias when she got home. "Apparently we're dating now, just thought you should know." His response came quickly. "According to who?" "Mrs. Hemming. Dale Patterson. Probably half the town by now. Sounds about right. Want me to stop coming around?" She stared at that text for a long moment. Did she? It would certainly make things easier. People would find something else to talk about. She could settle into her quiet life and learn to be invisible again. But she didn't want easy. She wanted real. "No. I like having you around. If they want to talk, let them talk." "You sure? It won't just be talk. People here have opinions about everything. Let them have opinions. I'm done living my life for an audience." "All right, then." That weekend, Elias came by to help her paint the living room. She'd chosen a warm gray that made the space feel bigger, less suffocating. They worked in companionable silence, occasionally commenting on technique or asking for the roller, but mostly just existing in the same space without needing to fill it with words. It was during a water break that Lena asked the question she'd been holding on to. "Why are you still here? In Willow Hollow, I mean." Elias wiped paint off his hands with a rag. "The ranch. My dad left it to me. Can't exactly pack that up and move it." "But you could sell it. Go somewhere else. Somewhere people don't think they know everything about you." "Could." He looked around her living room at the half-painted walls. "But this is home. Even when it's hard, even when people talk, it's still the place I know. The place that knows me, whether they understand me or not." Doesn't that bother you, being misunderstood? Used to. Less now. He met her eyes. I figure if people want to think I'm simple or lacking or whatever else they say, that's their business. I know who I am. The people who matter know who I am. That's enough. Who are the people who matter? He smiled, that small, genuine smile she was starting to recognize. Right now, you're one of them. Something warm spread through her chest. Not butterflies or fireworks or any of those cliches, just warmth, steadiness, the feeling of being seen. They finished painting as the sun set, and Lena stood back to survey their work. The room looked completely different, lighter, more hers. Thank you, she said, for helping with this, with everything. You keep thanking me like I'm doing you a favor. But honestly, Lena, I like being here. I like talking to you. He stopped himself. You like what? He looked at her for a long moment, something unreadable in his expression. Then he shook his head. Nothing. I should go. You've got paint in your hair, by the way. She touched her head and found a streak of gray. Great. Now I'll match the walls. He laughed. A real laugh, not just a smile. And the sound of it made her wish he'd stay longer. But he didn't. He cleaned his brushes, said goodnight, and left. Lena stood in her newly painted living room, touched the wall to make sure it was real, and admitted to herself what she'd been avoiding. She was falling for Elias Boone. Not despite what everyone said about him, because of who he actually was when the rest of the world wasn't watching. And that terrified her. Because in a town like Willow Hollow, choosing someone everyone else had dismissed wasn't just a personal decision. It was a statement, a rebellion, a way of saying that everything they believed about worth and value and what made a person matter was wrong. And Lena had already failed once at being brave. Could she do it again? Could she choose him and mean it, even when the weight of everyone's judgment pressed down like weather? She didn't know, but as she washed paint off her hands and looked around the room they'd transformed together, she thought maybe she wanted to find out. The decision to find out came easier than Lena expected. What came hard was everything after. She started spending more time with Elias, and not just when he showed up with food or tools. She'd drive out to the Hendricks ranch where he worked, bringing lunch in old Tupperware containers and sitting with him on the tailgate of his truck while he ate. They'd talk about nothing important, the weather, a book she was reading, a colt that had been born that morning, and somehow those conversations felt more substantial than any she'd had in the city. The ranch itself was beautiful in a way that didn't require maintenance. Rolling fields, a barn that had been standing since before either of them were born, horses that moved like they understood something humans had forgotten. Elias would point things out as they ate. A hawk circling overhead, the way the light hit the pond at noon. How you could tell it was going to rain by the way the cattle clustered near the fence line. You really love this, Lena said one afternoon, watching him watch the land. I do. He didn't elaborate, but he didn't need to. It was written in everything about him out here. The way he moved, the ease in his shoulders, the softness in his eyes when he looked at a mare and her foal grazing in the distance. Did you ever think about doing something else? Like what? I don't know. College, travel, anything besides ranch work. He smiled a little. My guidance counselor asked me the same thing senior year. Said I had decent grades, could probably get into state school if I wanted. But I couldn't see the point. Everything I needed was already here. That simple? That's simple. He crumpled up the wrapper from his sandwich. I know that probably sounds boring to you. You left because you wanted more. I left because I thought I wanted more, she corrected. Turns out what I wanted and what I needed were two different things. And now? Now I'm trying to figure out what I actually need instead of what I think I'm supposed to want. He looked at her then, something careful in his expression. And what do you think you need? The honest answer would have been too much, too soon. So she deflected. Better coffee, for starters. The stuff at the grocery store tastes like dirt. There's a place in Redfield, about 20 minutes out. They roast their own beans. I could take you sometime. Is that your way of asking me on a date, Elias Boone? She'd meant it as a joke, something to cut the tension building between them. But he didn't laugh. Would you say yes if it was? Her heart did something complicated in her chest. Yeah, I would. Saturday then, 10 o'clock. It's a date. The words hung there between them, acknowledged now, real. Elias stood up, brushed crumbs off his jeans, and looked almost nervous. She'd never seen him nervous before. I should get back to work, he said. Right, yeah, me too. She had no work to get back to, but standing there felt suddenly impossible. He helped her down from the tailgate, his hand warm and calloused against hers, and she drove home with her windows down and her radio up, trying not to overthink what had just happened. She failed spectacularly. By the time Saturday arrived, Lena had changed her outfit 4 times and was seriously considering a 5th. It was just coffee, with a man she'd already spent hours with, but somehow labeling it a date made everything feel different, heavier with possibility. She settled on jeans and a blue sweater that her roommate in Chicago had once said brought out her eyes. Then she felt stupid for caring whether her eyes were brought out. Then she left the sweater on anyway. Elias picked her up at exactly 10 o'clock in his truck, which he'd clearly cleaned out for the occasion. No hay, no feed bags, no tools rattling around in the back. He'd even run it through a car wash. You clean up nice, she said, climbing in. So do you. He said it simply, factually, like he was commenting on the weather. But his ears went a little red, which told her he'd thought about what to say before saying it. The drive to Redfield was easy. They talked about nothing and everything, her plans for the garden she was thinking about starting, his concerns about a fence line that needed replacing before winter, whether the diner in town would ever update its menu beyond meatloaf and chicken fried steak. Probably not, Elias said. Marge has been making the same 6 things since 1987. Why would she change now? Because variety is the spice of life? Marge would say consistency is the foundation of life, and tell you to order the meatloaf if you don't like it. Lena laughed. You're probably right. The coffee shop was tucked into a brick building on Redfield's main street, the kind of place that looked like it had been there forever and planned to stay forever more. Inside, it smelled like roasting beans and cinnamon, and the barista, a woman with gray dreads and paint-stained overalls, greeted Elias like an old friend. Elias, haven't seen you in a month. Thought maybe you'd switch to that chain garbage. Never, Cass, just been busy. Busy's good. Cass's eyes slid to Lena with obvious curiosity. And who's this? Lena Hart. Lena, this is Cass. She makes the best coffee in 3 counties. 4 counties, Cass corrected. But who's counting? She stuck out a hand and Lena shook it. Any friend of Elias is a friend of mine. What can I get you? Lena ordered a latte. Elias got his usual. Black coffee, no sugar, nothing fancy. They sat by the window in mismatched chairs that had probably been salvaged from someone's grandmother's dining room, and Lena realized she was nervous. Not the bad kind of nervous, the good kind, the kind that meant something mattered. So, Elias said, wrapping his hands around his cup like he needed something to hold on to. I should probably tell you that people are definitely going to hear about this. About coffee? About us being seen together in Redfield, at a coffee shop, on a Saturday morning. He said it matter-of-factly, but there was something underneath it, a warning, maybe, or just acknowledgement of the reality they were walking into. Let them hear about it. Lena, I'm serious. I'm tired of living my life based on what people think. I did that in Chicago. Stayed in a relationship that was wrong because it looked right. Kept a job I hated because it sounded impressive. Pretended I was happy when I was falling apart. She set down her cup. I'm not doing that anymore. This town's not like Chicago. People don't forget. They don't move on. Whatever we do, whatever this becomes, they'll have opinions about it. Loud ones. And you care what they think? He was quiet for a moment, looking into his coffee like it might have answers. I used to, spent a lot of years trying to prove I wasn't what they said I was. Trying to be louder, more ambitious, more whatever they decided I was lacking. Then I realized I was exhausting myself trying to meet standards that didn't even make sense. So I stopped. Stopped caring? Stopped trying to change their minds. There's a difference. He looked at her. But that doesn't mean it doesn't affect you. Their judgment, their assumptions, it gets heavy after a while. Then we'll carry it together. Something shifted in his face, surprise maybe, or relief. You say that now. But when people start talking, when they start picking apart everything we do, questioning why you'd choose someone like me when you could supposedly do better. Someone like you? Lena leaned forward. Elias, you're the first person in this entire town who's treated me like I'm worth knowing. Not the girl who left, not the woman who came back broken. Just me. If they can't see what that means, that's their problem, not mine. He didn't say anything for a long moment. just looked at her with those careful brown eyes, and she wondered if anyone had ever chosen him this clearly before. "Okay," he said finally. "Okay." They finished their coffee talking about safer things, books, movies, the questionable life choices of Cass's cat, who apparently had a habit of stealing socks from the laundromat next door. But something had been established, a line drawn that couldn't be uncrossed. They were doing this, whatever this was. On the drive back to Willow Hollow, Elias reached across the truck's bench seat and took her hand. It was such a simple gesture, almost old-fashioned, but it made Lena's chest feel tight in a way that had nothing to do with anxiety. "This okay?" he asked. "Yeah, it's okay." His thumb traced small circles on the back of her hand, and they drove like that the rest of the way home, the radio playing low and the afternoon sun slanting through the windshield. He dropped her off at her house and walked her to the porch, which felt absurdly formal until he stopped at the bottom step and looked up at her. "I had a good time," he said. "Me too. Can I take you to dinner next week, somewhere nicer than coffee? Are we talking Olive Garden nice or actual restaurant nice?" He smiled. "There's a steakhouse in Redfield, nothing fancy, but the food's good and it's quiet. Sounds perfect." He nodded, started to turn away, then stopped. "Lena, yeah? I'm glad you came back." Before she could respond, he was walking back to his truck, and she was standing on her porch with her heart doing acrobatics and a smile she couldn't control. She didn't have to wait until Monday to hear what people thought about their coffee date. Mrs. Hemming called Sunday afternoon, ostensibly to ask about a church potluck Lena had no intention of attending, but really to fish for information. "I heard you were in Redfield yesterday," Mrs. Hemming said after 30 seconds of pleasantries. "Was I?" "With Elias Boone, at that coffee shop. Cass makes good coffee." "I'm sure she does." A pause loaded with implication. "Are you and Elias seeing each other?" "We're friends. Friends who go on coffee dates." "Is there a question in there, Mrs. Hemming, or are you just confirming things you already think you know?" The older woman made a sound that could have been disapproval or indigestion. "I'm just concerned, dear. Elias is a nice boy, but he's not exactly ambitious. And you've always been so driven. I'd hate to see you settle for less than you deserve." "What I deserve is to make my own choices without everyone in town weighing in on them." "Of course, dear, I'm just saying, I know what you're saying, and I appreciate your concern, but I'm fine." She ended the call before Mrs. Hemming could launch into whatever lecture was building, but the conversation sat with her the rest of the day, poking at insecurities she'd been trying to ignore. Was she settling? Choosing Elias because he was available and kind, not because she actually wanted him? Using him as a convenient reason to stay in Willow Hollow instead of facing the harder question of whether she could build a real life here? She didn't think so. But doubt had a way of growing in quiet spaces. By the time their dinner date arrived the following Friday, Lena had talked herself in and out of it 3 times. She almost canceled twice. But then Elias showed up at her door in actual slacks and a button-down shirt that looked like he'd ironed it himself, holding flowers he'd clearly picked from someone's garden, and all her doubts evaporated. "You look beautiful," he said, handing her the flowers. "You look terrified." He laughed, some of the tension leaving his shoulders. "Little bit. Haven't done this in a while." "Done what? Dinner? Dating? The whole thing?" He gestured vaguely, and she found his awkwardness endearing. "How long's a while? 4 years? Maybe 5. What happened 5 years ago?" His expression closed off slightly. "Bad relationship. Ended badly. Haven't really felt like trying again until now." There was a story there, but Lena didn't push. Instead, she put the flowers in water, grabbed her jacket, and let him lead her to his truck. The steakhouse was exactly what he'd promised. Nothing fancy, but warm and comfortable with red leather booths and dim lighting that made everyone look softer. They ordered drinks and steaks and settled into a conversation that flowed easier than it had any right to. "Tell me about the bad relationship," Lena said after their food arrived. Elias cut into his steak, clearly considering how much to share. "Her name was Jennifer. We dated for 2 years. She was from Redfield, worked at the bank. Smart, funny, had her whole life planned out. Let me guess. The plan didn't include a ranch hand from Willow Hollow?" "Not exactly." He chewed slowly, thinking. "At first she said it did. Said she liked that I was different from the guys she usually dated. down to earth, real. All that stuff people say when they're convincing themselves they want something they don't actually want. What changed? Nothing changed. That was the problem. I was always who I was, but she kept waiting for me to become someone else. Someone with bigger ambitions, more money, more everything. And when I didn't, when it became clear this was it, working the ranch, living quietly, being content with a simple life, she got resentful. How did it end? She left me for a guy who managed a car dealership in Redfield, said he was going places, had drive, wanted more out of life. Last I heard, they're married with twins and a house in the suburbs. Do you regret it? Not changing for her? He looked at her steadily. No, because changing wouldn't have made either of us happy. She would have still wanted more, and I would have been miserable pretending to be someone I'm not. That's very mature of you. It's survival. You can't spend your whole life trying to fit into spaces that weren't made for you. Eventually, you have to accept that maybe the problem isn't you, it's the space. Lena set down her fork. Is that what you think about Willow Hollow? That it's not made for you? I think Willow Hollow decided who I was a long time ago, and nothing I do is going to change that. So I just live my life and let them think whatever they want. Doesn't that get lonely? Sometimes. He met her eyes. Less now. The air between them shifted, charged with something neither of them had named yet, but both of them felt. Lena wanted to reach across the table and take his hand, tell him she understood that loneliness, that she'd felt it too in different ways. But before she could, their waitress appeared to refill their drinks, and the moment passed. They finished dinner talking about lighter things, and afterwards Elias drove her home the long way, taking back roads that wound through fields and past farmhouses, lit up against the dark. I used to love this drive, Lena said, watching the landscape blur past her window. Before I left, I'd take it whenever I needed to think. What did you think about? Getting out, seeing the world, becoming someone important. She laughed without humor. Turns out the world's not that impressive up close. What's it like? Chicago? Loud, crowded. Everyone's always rushing somewhere, doing something, trying to be somebody. It's exhausting. She looked at him. Did you ever want to leave? Even once? When my dad died, yeah. Thought about selling the ranch, going somewhere nobody knew me or him or what we'd lost. But then I realized I'd just be running, and whatever I was running from would still be there waiting when I stopped. Do you think that's what I did? Ran? He pulled up in front of her house and put the truck in park. I think you went looking for something you couldn't find here. And now you're back because you're looking for something different. Nothing wrong with that. Even if what I'm looking for is here? Especially then. She wanted to kiss him. The impulse was sudden and strong, surprising her with its intensity. But something held her back, fear maybe, or just the knowledge that once they crossed that line, everything would change. Instead, she said, "Thank you for dinner. I had a really good time." Me too. He walked her to the door like he had after coffee, and this time when they stood on her porch, he reached up and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. The gesture was so gentle it made her throat tight. Good night, Lena. Good night. She watched him drive away, then went inside and sat on her couch in the dark, trying to understand what was happening to her. This wasn't what she'd expected when she came back to Willow Hollow. She'd thought she'd fix up her mother's house, maybe find some peace, eventually figure out what came next. She hadn't planned on Elias, hadn't planned on feeling seen and understood and valued by someone the entire town had dismissed as not enough. But here she was, falling, and it terrified her. The next morning, she got her first taste of what Elias had warned her about. She was at the grocery store, because where else was there to go in Willow Hollow, when she ran into Melissa Crawford and two other women from their high school class. They were clustered near the produce section, and their conversation died the second they saw Lena. "Lena, hi!" Melissa's voice was too bright, too fake. "We were just talking about you." "Were you?" "Yeah, Sarah saw you and Elias at that steakhouse in Redfield. She said you two looked very cozy." Sarah, a blonde woman Lena vaguely remembered as being on the cheerleading squad, nodded enthusiastically. "You were holding hands across the table. It was so sweet." They weren't holding hands. They'd barely touched. But Lena didn't correct her. "So is it serious?" the third woman asked. Lena couldn't remember her name. We're getting to know each other. That's great, Melissa said, though her tone suggested it was anything but. I mean, Elias is a really nice guy. Super sweet. Just, you know. No, I don't know. What? Nothing. Just that he's very content with his life. Working at the ranch and all. Some women might find that boring, but if you're happy, that's what matters. I am happy. Good. That's good, because you know what they say. The heart wants what it wants, even if what it wants is... She trailed off, looking at her friends for support. Simple, Sarah offered. Uncomplicated, the third woman said. Safe, Melissa finished. There's nothing wrong with safe, especially after everything you've been through. Lena felt her jaw tighten. What exactly have I been through? Oh, you know, the failed relationship, the job situation, moving back here. It's been hard for you. So if Elias makes you feel better about all that, more power to you. I'm not with Elias because he makes me feel better about myself. I'm with him because he's a good person who treats me with respect. Of course he does. He'd be crazy not to. You're quite a catch. Melissa smiled that sharp smile of hers. I'm just saying, make sure you're choosing him for the right reasons and not just because he's available and nice. Thanks for your concern, Lena said flatly, but I think I can manage my own love life. She walked away before they could say anything else, her hands shaking slightly as she grabbed a cart. Behind her, she heard their voices pick up again, no doubt dissecting every word she'd said. She texted Elias from the parking lot. Just had my first intervention about our relationship. Apparently you're safe and uncomplicated. His response came quickly. Could be worse. They could have called me boring and simple. They implied that too. Sounds about right. You okay? She sat in her car looking at that text for a long moment. Was she okay? People were going to talk. They were already talking. And it was only going to get worse the more serious she and Elias became. Yeah, I'm okay, just annoyed. Want to come to the ranch? I'm working on a fence, but I could use the company. Be there in 20. She drove out to Hendrick's ranch with her windows down and her radio up, trying to shake off the encounter with Melissa. By the time she pulled up next to Elias's truck, she'd managed to downgrade her anger from boiling to simmering. He was exactly where he said he'd be, replacing fence posts in the north pasture. His shirt was dark with sweat, and there was dirt on his jeans, and when he saw her truck, he stood up and waved. You look mad, he said, when she got close enough. I am mad. At me? At everyone who thinks they know what's best for me better than I do. He drove another post into the ground with more force than necessary. What did they say? She told him about the encounter with Melissa and her friends, and with each sentence his expression grew more closed off. They're not wrong, he said when she finished. What? I am safe. I am uncomplicated. Compared to whatever life you had in Chicago, this is probably boring as hell. Don't do that. Do what? Agree with them. Give them power over how you see yourself. He set down the post driver and looked at her. Lena, I'm not the guy who's going to give you an exciting life. I work on a ranch. I live in a small town. I'm not ambitious or driven or any of those things people value. If you're with me, this is what you get. And if that's not enough, stop. She moved closer to him. You want to know what I had in Chicago? A boyfriend who was more interested in his phone than in me. A job where I spent 60 hours a week making rich people richer. An apartment I could barely afford in a neighborhood where I didn't know anyone's name. That's what ambition got me. That's what exciting looked like. So you came back here because you gave up. I came back here because I wanted a life that felt real. And the realest thing I've found is you. He looked at her like he wanted to believe it, but didn't quite dare. I'm not Jennifer, Lena said quietly. I'm not waiting for you to become someone else. I like who you are. You say that now. I mean it now. And I'll mean it tomorrow, and the day after that. She took his hand, dirty and calloused and real. But if you don't believe me, if you think I'm just settling for you because I'm broken or desperate or running away from something, then maybe this won't work, because I need you to trust that I know my own mind. He was quiet for a long moment, his thumb tracing patterns on her hand the way it had in the truck. Okay, he said finally. Okay, I trust you. I'll try to trust you anyway. This is new for me, being someone's choice instead of their backup plan. You're not my backup plan, you're my first choice. He pulled her closer then, and she went willingly, wrapping her arms around him despite the sweat and dirt. He smelled like hay and earth, and something else that was just him. And standing there in the middle of a field with fence posts scattered around them, Lena felt more certain of this choice than she'd felt about anything in years. "Stay for dinner?" he asked into her hair. "You cooking?" "I was thinking we could cook together. I've got stuff for pasta at the house." "The house?" He pulled back slightly. "Yeah, my place. You've never seen it. You've never invited me. I'm inviting you now." So she followed him in her truck down a dirt road that led to a small house set back from the main ranch buildings. It was simple. White siding, blue shutters, a porch that wrapped around two sides. Nothing fancy, but well maintained. Loved. Inside was just as uncomplicated. A living room with a worn couch and bookshelves crammed with paperbacks. A kitchen with outdated appliances but spotless counters. Photographs on the walls, mostly landscapes, a few of horses, one of an older man who must have been his father. "It's not much," Elias said, suddenly self-conscious. "It's perfect." They cooked pasta together in his small kitchen, working around each other easily now, the rhythm familiar. Elias told her about the fence repairs, about a mare that might be pregnant, about the way the Hendricks grandson kept asking to learn to ride despite being terrified of horses. "Sounds like me at that age," Lena said, draining pasta water. "I begged for riding lessons, but cried the first time I actually got on a horse." "Did you keep going?" "For a year. Then I decided I'd rather read about horses than ride them." He smiled. "That tracks." They ate at his kitchen table, and afterwards they moved to the porch with glasses of sweet tea and watched the sun set over the fields. Elias sat close enough that their shoulders touched, and eventually Lena leaned into him and he wrapped an arm around her. "This is nice," she said. "Yeah, it is." "Do you bring a lot of people here?" "To the house?" "No. You're actually the first since Jennifer." She sat up to look at him. "Really?" "Really. This is my space. I don't let people in easy." "Why'd you let me in?" He thought about it. "Because with you, I don't feel like I have to perform. I can just be." Lena understood that more than he probably knew. They stayed on the porch until full dark, talking about nothing important, and when Elias finally walked her to her truck, he kissed her. Just a brief press of lips, gentle and questioning, but it set her whole body humming. "I've been wanting to do that," he admitted. "You should do it again." So he did. Longer this time, deeper, his hand cupping her face like she was something precious. When they finally pulled apart, they were both breathing hard. "I should go," Lena said, though she didn't want to. "Yeah, you should." But neither of them moved. "If I stay," she started. "You're not ready, and that's okay. I can wait." "What if I want to stay?" "Then stay. But not because you feel like you should, only if you really want to." She kissed him again, making her answer clear. And then she got in her truck and drove home, her heart racing and her mind trying to catch up with what her body already knew. She wanted this. Wanted him. Wanted the simple, uncomplicated, real thing they were building together. And Willow Hollow could judge all it wanted. The next 3 weeks passed in a blur of stolen moments and growing certainty. Lena spent more time at Elias's house than her own, learning the rhythms of his life. Early mornings feeding horses, afternoons mending whatever needed mending, evenings on the porch watching the sky change colors. She started keeping a toothbrush in his bathroom, a change of clothes in his dresser. He started leaving coffee made for her in the mornings when she stayed over, exactly how she liked it. They didn't talk about what they were becoming, they just became it. But Willow Hollow noticed. Of course it noticed. The whispers followed Lena everywhere now. At the post office, the library, the gas station where she filled up her tank every Thursday. People stopped pretending to be subtle about it. They'd stare openly, lean together to murmur, shake their heads like they were watching a slow-motion car crash they couldn't look away from. "Give it 6 months," she heard Dale Patterson tell someone at the hardware store. "She'll get bored playing farmhand's girlfriend and realize what she's missing." "Poor Elias," Mrs. Hemming said to her bridge club, loud enough for Lena to hear from 2 aisles over at the grocery store. "He's going to get his heart broken when she comes to her senses." The worst part was that some of them acted concerned, like they were doing her a favor by pointing out all the ways this relationship didn't make sense. Melissa stopped her outside the bank one afternoon with that same sharp smile. "So you and Elias are still a thing?" "We are," Good for you, really. I think it's sweet. Melissa adjusted her purse strap. I was talking to Jennifer the other day, his ex, and she mentioned how hard it was being with someone who had such limited goals. But maybe that's what you need right now, something easy. Lena felt her molars grind together. There's nothing easy about Elias. He's one of the most complex people I've ever met. Oh, I didn't mean it like that. I just meant he's not demanding, doesn't push you to be more than you are. After Chicago, that must be nice. After Chicago, being with someone real is nice. Someone who doesn't measure worth by job titles or bank accounts. Melissa's smile tightened. Well, as long as you're happy settling in Willow Hollow with a ranch hand, that's all that matters. Lena walked away before she said something she'd regret, but the conversation stayed with her, needling at insecurities she thought she'd buried. Was she settling? The question kept surfacing no matter how many times she pushed it down. Not because she believed it, she didn't, but because hearing it so often made it hard to ignore. Like background radiation, constant and invisible, but still doing damage. She didn't tell Elias about these encounters at first. Didn't want to burden him with the weight of other people's opinions when he'd already carried that weight his whole life. But he noticed anyway. He always noticed. "You're quiet tonight," he said one evening. They were at his place, cooking dinner together like they did most nights now. She was chopping vegetables while he seasoned chicken, and the silence between them usually felt comfortable. Tonight it felt heavy. "Just thinking. About?" She set down the knife. "Do you ever wish you'd done more with your life? Gone to college, traveled, built something bigger than this?" He stopped what he was doing and looked at her. "Where's this coming from?" "Nowhere. Everywhere. People keep asking me why I'm with you like there's some obvious reason I shouldn't be, and I keep telling them they're wrong, but maybe they're not wrong." "No, that's not what I'm saying." She turned to face him fully. "I'm saying I don't understand why this town can't see what I see. Why they keep reducing you to this two-dimensional character who wants nothing and is nothing. Because it's easier than seeing me as I actually am." "Which is what?" He leaned against the counter, arms crossed, considering the question. "Someone who figured out early that the things most people chase don't actually lead to happiness. Money, status, recognition, none of it matters if you hate your life while you're getting it. I'd rather have less and be content than have more and be miserable." "So you're happy with everything exactly as it is?" "I'm happy with most things. There's always room for growth, for change. But fundamentally, yeah. I like my life. I like working with my hands, being outside, taking care of things that need taking care of. That might not sound impressive to people who measure success differently, but it's enough for me. What about us? Are we enough?" The question came out smaller than she intended, more vulnerable. Elias stepped closer, took her hands in his. "You're more than enough. You're everything I didn't know I was missing. Even if being with me means more judgment, more people telling you I'm going to leave?" "Lena, people have been telling me I'm not good enough my whole life. If I'd believed them, I'd have given up a long time ago. I'm not going to start believing them now, especially about something this important." She kissed him then, needing the reassurance of his mouth on hers, his hands solid and real on her waist. When they pulled apart, she rested her forehead against his. "I'm not going to leave," she said. "I know." "Do you?" "Because sometimes I worry you're just waiting for me to prove everyone right." He pulled back to look at her properly. "I'm not waiting for you to leave. I'm just being realistic about the fact that you could. That this life might not be what you want long term. And if that happens, it'll hurt, but I'll survive it." "That's bleak. That's honest." He tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "But for what it's worth, I don't think you're going anywhere. I think you're here because you want to be, not because you're running away or settling or any of the other things people say." "How do you know?" "Because of the way you look at me, like I'm worth seeing." Something in Lena's chest cracked open then, not painfully, but like a door she'd been holding shut finally giving way. She realized she loved him, completely, terrifyingly, in a way that made everything else feel small. She didn't say it out loud, not yet, but she felt it in every cell of her body. They finished making dinner and ate on the porch as the sun went down, talking about lighter things. A book she was reading, a problem he was having with the ranch's irrigation system, whether they should get a dog. Normal things, future things. Later, lying in his bed with her head on his chest and his fingers tracing patterns on her shoulder, Lena made a decision. I want to meet your friends, she said into the darkness. I don't really have friends. Not the way you mean. You have people you care about, people who care about you. I want to know them. He was quiet for a moment. There's Tom and Sarah Hendricks. They own the ranch. And Old Man Carter, who lives down the road. Maybe 3 or 4 other people I'd consider actual friends. But it's not like a social circle or anything. I don't need a social circle. I just want to be part of your life, all of it, not just the parts you show me here. You're already part of my life. Then prove it. Introduce me to the people who matter to you. So he did. The following Saturday, they drove out to the Hendricks main house for dinner. Tom and Sarah were in their 60s, weathered and warm, the kind of people who'd been married so long they finished each other's sentences. They welcomed Lena like she'd always been part of the picture. About time Elias brought someone around, Sarah said, ushering them into a dining room that smelled like roast beef and fresh bread. We were starting to think he'd sworn off people entirely. Just most people, Elias said. Present company excluded. Tom laughed, a big booming sound that filled the room. That's fair. Most people aren't worth the trouble. Over dinner, Lena learned things about Elias she hadn't known. That he'd basically kept the ranch running single-handedly when Tom had a heart attack 3 years ago. That he'd taught Sarah's granddaughter to ride when she was terrified of horses. That he'd once spent an entire night in the barn with a sick colt, refusing to leave until he was sure it would survive. He doesn't talk about the good things he does, Sarah said, passing Lena more potatoes. Never has. But we notice. We all notice. Someone's got to do the work, Elias said, uncomfortable with the praise. Might as well be me. After dinner, Tom pulled Lena aside while Elias and Sarah were arguing about dessert in the kitchen. You're good for him, Tom said without preamble. You don't know me well enough to say that. I know enough. He's different since you came around. Lighter. Like he's carrying less weight. People in town don't agree with you. People in town are idiots. Tom said it matter-of-factly, like he was commenting on the weather. They look at Elias and see what they want to see. Someone simple. Someone safe to overlook. But that boy's got more integrity in his little finger than most of them have in their whole bodies. You know that, or you wouldn't be here. I do know that. Good. Then don't let their noise get to you. They'll talk no matter what you do. Might as well give them something worth talking about. That conversation stayed with Lena on the drive home. Elias was quiet, one hand on the wheel and one holding hers, and she watched the dark fields blur past her window and thought about what Tom had said. Give them something worth talking about. Elias? Yeah? What if we made it official, you and me? He glanced at her, then back at the road. I thought we were official. I mean really official, like tell everyone we're together. Stop hiding. We're not hiding. We're not exactly advertising either. He was quiet for a long moment. Is that what you want? To advertise? I want people to know I chose you, clearly and deliberately. I'm tired of the speculation and the judgment and all the people acting like this is temporary. Lena, that won't make them stop. It'll probably make it worse. I don't care. Let it get worse. At least then we're facing it head on instead of pretending it doesn't exist. He pulled up in front of her house. She'd been sleeping at her own place more lately, trying to maintain some independence even though she preferred his bed, and put the truck in park. If we do this, if we make a statement, they're going to come at us hard, question everything, pick it apart, make assumptions about you, about me, about what we're doing together. Let them. You say that now. I mean it now. I'm not scared of them anymore. I'm only scared of waking up one day and realizing I let their opinions matter more than what I actually want. He looked at her for a long time, something unreadable in his expression. Then he leaned across the truck and kissed her, slow and deep and certain. Okay, he said when they broke apart. We'll make it official. Yeah? Yeah, but on our terms. Not because we're trying to prove something to them, but because we want people to know what we mean to each other. What do I mean to you? He smiled, that small, genuine smile she'd come to love. Everything. The word hung in the air between them, weighted with all the things they hadn't said yet, but both felt. Lena kissed him again, trying to pour into it all the feelings building in her chest. When she finally went inside, she stood in her living room for a long time, trying to process what they'd just agreed to. Making it official meant facing the full force of Willow Hollow's judgment, It meant standing up in front of a town that had already decided their relationship was wrong and saying they didn't care. It meant being brave in a way she hadn't been since leaving for Chicago all those years ago. But this time, she wasn't alone. The next morning, Lena woke up to her phone buzzing with texts from Elias. "I've been thinking about what you said, about making it official. I have an idea, but it might be too much." She called him instead of texting back. "What kind of idea?" "The kind that'll definitely get people talking." She could hear the nervousness in his voice. "The fall festival is in 2 weeks. Everyone in town goes. What if we went together, like actually together, not just running into each other there?" The fall festival was the biggest event in Willow Hollow's social calendar. 3 days of craft booths, food vendors, live music, and everyone showing off their best version of themselves. Going together would be like taking out a billboard announcing their relationship. "That's not too much," Lena said. "That's perfect." "You sure? Because once we do this, there's no taking it back. Everyone will know." "Good. Let them know." She could hear him exhale like he'd been holding his breath. "Okay, then it's a date." The 2 weeks before the festival dragged and flew simultaneously. Lena spent them fielding questions from people who'd somehow already heard about their plans, because of course they had, and trying not to second-guess the decision. Melissa cornered her at the grocery store again, because apparently that was Melissa's favorite hobby now. "I heard you and Elias are making your debut at the festival. We're just going together." "Right, just going together. To the biggest social event of the year, where everyone will see you." Melissa examined her manicured nails. "You know people are taking bets on how long you'll last, right? Whether you'll make it through Christmas or bail before Thanksgiving." Lena felt her jaw tighten. "People have too much time on their hands. People are just realistic. I mean, look at you two. You're educated, well-traveled, used to sophistication. He's a ranch hand who's never left the county. What do you even talk about?" "Everything. We talk about everything." "Like what? Cows, hay?" "Like life, dreams, the things that actually matter instead of the superficial bullshit most people waste their time on." Melissa's eyes narrowed. "You're defensive. I'm protective. There's a difference." "Is there? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you're trying really hard to convince yourself this is a good idea." "From where I'm standing, it looks like you're threatened by the fact that I found something real while you're stuck in whatever gilded cage your husband built for you." It was a low blow, and Lena knew it, but she was tired of Melissa's passive-aggressive concern that wasn't concern at all. Melissa's face went hard. "At least my husband has ambition. At least he wants more out of life than mucking stalls and fixing fences." "And does that ambition keep you warm at night? Does it make you feel seen and valued? Or are you just as lonely as I was in Chicago, pretending the facade is enough?" For just a second, something cracked in Melissa's expression. Something vulnerable and true. Then it was gone, replaced by that sharp smile. "Good luck at the festival, Lena. You're going to need it." She walked away before Lena could respond, her heels clicking on the linoleum like punctuation marks. Lena texted Elias immediately. "Just had another encounter with Melissa. She's taking bets on when we'll break up." "Of course she is." "What'd you say?" "That we talk about things that actually matter." "Did she believe you?" "Doesn't matter if she believed me. I believe me. That's all that counts." But as the festival approached, Lena's confidence started to waver. Not about Elias. She was sure about him in a way she'd never been sure about anything, but about her ability to withstand the scrutiny, the judgment, the constant commentary on her choices. The night before the festival, she couldn't sleep. She lay in her bed staring at the ceiling, running through worst-case scenarios. What if people were openly hostile? What if they confronted them in public? What if Elias saw how much it bothered her and decided she wasn't worth the trouble? At 2 a.m, she gave up on sleep and drove to his house. He answered the door in sweatpants and a t-shirt, his hair sticking up on one side. "Lena, what's wrong?" "I can't sleep. I keep thinking about tomorrow." He stepped aside to let her in. "Second thoughts?" "Not about you. Never about you. Just about whether I'm strong enough to handle what's coming." He led her to the couch and pulled her against his side. "You don't have to be strong all the time. That's what I'm here for." "What if they're right? What if I'm not cut out for this life?" "Then we'll figure it out together. But Lena, you've survived leaving everything you knew, Starting over in a city alone, losing a relationship and a job, and having to rebuild from scratch. You're stronger than you think. I don't feel strong. I feel terrified. Good. That means it matters. She tilted her head to look at him. You're not scared? I'm terrified. I've been terrified since the day you first smiled at me, because I knew even then that you could wreck me if I let you. He brushed hair away from her face. But I'd rather be wrecked by something real than safe with something that doesn't matter. Lena kissed him then, trying to communicate everything she felt and couldn't quite put into words. When they broke apart, she stayed curled against him on the couch, his heartbeat steady under her ear. Stay, he said quietly. Don't drive home at 2 a.m. Just stay. So she did. They moved to his bed and she fell asleep wrapped in his arms, his breathing evening out before hers did. And for the first time in weeks, she slept soundly. The morning of the festival dawned bright and unseasonably warm. Lena woke up to Elias already dressed, making breakfast in the kitchen. She found him scrambling eggs while coffee perked on the counter, and something about the domesticity of it made her chest tight. Morning, he said, glancing up. You sleep okay? Better than I have in weeks. Good. You need coffee before facing the masses? I need a lot of coffee before facing the masses. They ate breakfast together, not talking much, both of them aware of what the day would bring. After Lena went home to change into actual clothes, jeans and a blue shirt that Elias had once said made her eyes look bright, and met him back at his place at 11. He was waiting on the porch, wearing dark jeans and a button-down shirt he'd clearly ironed. He'd even trimmed his hair. When he saw her, his face softened into that smile she loved. You look beautiful. You look nervous. I am nervous, but I'm also ready. They drove to the festival grounds in his truck, hands clasped on the bench seat between them. Lena could see the white tents and colorful banners from a mile away, could hear the tinny sound of music carrying on the wind. Her stomach churned. We can still turn around, Elias said quietly. No, we can't. She squeezed his hand. We do this together, or we don't do it at all. He parked in the dusty lot and came around to open her door. When she stepped down, he kept hold of her hand. You ready? No, but let's do it anyway. They walked toward the festival entrance hand in hand, and Lena felt every eye turn toward them. Conversations paused mid-sentence. People nudged each other and pointed. The whispers started immediately, a low hum of commentary she couldn't quite make out, but could definitely feel. Elias's hand tightened on hers. Ignore them. Kind of hard to ignore. Try anyway. They made it through the gates and into the main area, where food vendors lined both sides of a wide dirt path and craft booths filled the spaces between. Music played from a stage at the far end, some local band covering country songs, and the air smelled like funnel cake and barbecue. Under different circumstances, it would have been nice. Lena, Elias! They turned to find Sarah Hendricks waving at them from a booth selling homemade preserves. She came over and hugged them both, her smile genuine and warm. So glad you two made it. Tom's around here somewhere, probably stuffing his face with kettle corn, even though his doctor said no. She looked at their joined hands and her smile widened. About damn time you two made it official. We're trying, Lena said. Well, don't let the vultures get to you. They'll circle and pick, but that's just what small-town people do when they're bored. You stand your ground, and eventually they'll find someone else to fixate on. It was good advice, even if Lena wasn't sure she could follow it. They spent the next hour walking the festival, stopping at booths, trying to act normal while people stared and whispered. Some were subtle about it, others weren't. Dale Patterson watched them from the beer tent with that same smirk, and Melissa made a point of walking past with her husband, their picture-perfect life on display. But there were also people who smiled at them, who nodded in approval. Tom Hendricks found them and clapped Elias on the shoulder, told Lena she looked lovely. Riley from the grocery store waved enthusiastically from the face-painting booth. Old Man Carter tipped his hat at them from a bench, a silent acknowledgement that felt like blessing. Not everyone was against them. Lena had to keep reminding herself of that. They were standing in line for barbecue when Mrs. Hemming appeared beside them, her face arranged in that expression of concerned disapproval she'd perfected over 70-plus years. Elias, Lena. She said their names like they were evidence of poor judgment. Quite a statement you're making today. Just enjoying the festival, Elias said evenly. Of course you are. And together, no less. How long has this been going on? A while, Lena said. I see. And you think this is wise? The two of you? I think it's none of your business, Lena said before she could stop herself. Mrs. Hemming's eyes went wide. Well, I suppose that answers that question. What question? Whether you've thought this through. Clearly you haven't, or you'd see how mismatched you are. But young people never listen to their elders anymore. She shook her head. Mark my words, this will end in heartbreak. Probably his, poor boy. She walked away before either of them could respond, leaving a trail of judgment in her wake. I'm sorry, Lena said quietly. For what? For snapping at her. For making this harder. You didn't make anything harder, she did. And honestly, I'm glad you said something. I'm tired of people acting like we owe them explanations for our choices. They got their barbecue and found a spot under a tree to eat, away from the main flow of traffic. Lena picked at her food, her appetite gone. Hey, Elias touched her knee. Talk to me. This is awful. Everyone staring, everyone having opinions. How do you stand it? I don't stand it. I endure it. There's a difference. He set down his plate. But Lena, it gets easier. The more you stop caring what they think, the less power they have. I don't know if I can stop caring. Then care. Let it bother you. But don't let it change what you know to be true. Which is that this, he gestured between them, is real and worth fighting for. Before she could respond, a voice cut through the noise. Well, if it isn't Willow Hollow's most unlikely couple. They both turned to find Jennifer standing there, Elias's ex. She looked exactly like someone who'd upgraded. Designer jeans, expensive sunglasses, perfectly highlighted hair. Her smile was sharp enough to cut. Jennifer, Elias said flatly. Elias, it's been a while. Her eyes slid to Lena. And you must be the new girlfriend. I've heard so much about you. I'm sure you have. It's sweet, really, you two. Jennifer's voice dripped with condescension. Elias playing the same role with someone new, the steady, reliable guy who's always there, never demanding, never challenging, just there. That's enough, Elias said, his voice hard. Is it? Because I think Lena should know what she's signing up for. The monotony, the lack of ambition, the way he'll be perfectly content doing the exact same thing for the next 40 years. I tried to make it work, but eventually I realized I deserved someone who wanted more out of life. You mean someone who made more money, Lena said. Jennifer's smile tightened. Money's not everything, but drive is, vision is, the desire to actually build something instead of just maintaining what already exists. Building something like what? A bigger house? A nicer car? Those are just things, Jennifer. They don't mean anything if you're empty inside. And you think you're filled up by a ranch hand who's never going to amount to more than what he is right now. I think I'm filled up by a man who knows who he is and doesn't need to prove it to anyone, which is more than I can say for most people. Jennifer's face flushed. You'll see. Give it 6 months, a year. You'll wake up one day and realize you've settled for mediocrity, and by then it'll be too late to get back what you gave up. I didn't give anything up. I gained something I didn't know I needed. Jennifer looked at Elias then, something ugly in her expression. Good luck with this one. She seems about as delusional as you are. She walked away, her expensive shoes kicking up dust. Lena was shaking. I hate her. Join the club. Elias stood up and held out his hand. Come on, let's get out of here. We just got here. We made our statement. We showed up. That's enough for one day. They walked back through the festival, and this time Lena didn't try to ignore the stares. She met them head on, daring anyone to say something to her face. Most people looked away. In the parking lot, away from the crowds, Elias pulled her into his arms. You okay? No, but I will be. Jennifer's wrong, you know, about all of it. I know she is. Doesn't make it easier to hear. He pulled back to look at her. Do you regret this? Coming with me today? No. I regret that people like her exist, but I don't regret being with you. Even though it's hard, especially because it's hard, because it means something. He kissed her then, right there in the parking lot with dust swirling around their feet, and the sounds of the festival fading behind them. And when they broke apart, Lena felt steadier. "Take me home," she said. "Your home or mine?" "Yours. Always yours." They drove back to his house in comfortable silence, and Lena spent the rest of the afternoon on his porch, reading while he worked on replacing boards in the barn. Normal things. Real things. As the sun set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Elias came and sat beside her. "Thank you," he said. "For what?" "For showing up today. For standing with me even when it got ugly. That's what you do when you love someone." The words came out before she could stop them. She froze, waiting for his reaction. Elias stared at her, something shifting in his expression. "Say that again?" "That's what you do when you love someone," she repeated, slower this time, meaning it more. "You love me?" "Yeah, I do. I have for a while now. I was scared to say it." He cupped her face in his hands, his eyes intense. "I love you too. Have since the day you told Melissa Crawford, where she could shove her opinions." Lena laughed, something loosening in her chest. "That's a weird moment to fall in love." "It was perfect. You were perfect." He kissed her then, deep and sure, and Lena felt something click into place. This was right. They were right. And Willow Hollow could judge all it wanted. It wouldn't change what they'd found together. When they finally went inside, the night stretched ahead of them full of possibility. And for the first time since coming back to Willow Hollow, Lena felt like she was exactly where she was supposed to be. The confession changed things between them, though not in the ways Lena expected. If anything, saying the words out loud made everything feel more settled, like they'd been circling something unnamed and finally landed on solid ground. But loving someone in Willow Hollow wasn't a private affair. It was a public declaration that invited commentary, speculation, and in their case, escalating skepticism. 2 days after the festival, Elias showed up at Lena's house earlier than usual. She was still in pajamas, drinking coffee and trying to motivate herself to tackle the closet she'd been avoiding since moving back. When she opened the door, his expression told her something was wrong. "What happened?" He stepped inside, running a hand through his hair. "Tom wants to retire, sell the ranch." Lena set down her coffee. "When?" 6 months, maybe less. He had another scare with his heart last week. Didn't tell anyone until yesterday. Sarah's been after him for years to slow down, and I guess this was the final push. "What does that mean for you?" "It means I'm out of a job unless I can buy the place myself. Which I can't. Not even close." He sat heavily on her couch. "I've been working that ranch since I was 16. It's the only job I've ever had. The only one I've ever wanted." Lena sat beside him, taking his hand. "There are other ranches, other jobs. Not like this one. Tom gave me free rein, trusted me to make decisions. Most places, I'd be just another hand doing what I'm told." He stared at their joined hands. "And the house, that's part of the ranch property. If it sells, I lose that too. So find another place to live. It's not just a place, Lena. My dad built that house. It's where I grew up, where every memory I have of him exists. Losing the job is bad enough, but losing that..." His voice cracked slightly, and he stopped. She'd never seen him like this. Not defeated exactly, but close. Like he was watching the foundation of his life shift underneath him and had no idea how to stop it. "We'll figure it out," she said, though she had no idea how. "How?" "I've got some savings, but not enough to buy a ranch. Not even enough to put a decent down payment on one. And banks don't exactly line up to give loans to guys like me." "Guys like you?" "Guys with no college degree, no real assets, no proof they can do anything except manual labor. It's exactly how they see it. I've already looked into it before. When Tom first mentioned retiring a few years ago, every bank I talked to basically laughed me out the door." Lena felt anger rising in her chest. "Then we find another way. You could partner with someone or..." "Who?" "Nobody around here has that kind of money just sitting around. And the people who do aren't interested in investing in a struggling cattle ranch." They sat in silence for a moment. Outside, a dog barked and someone drove past blaring music from their car. Normal sounds from a world that kept moving whether you were falling apart or not. "What about your house?" Elias asked finally. "Could you sell it?" "My house?" "You own it outright. No mortgage. That's got to be worth something." Lena's mind raced. "Maybe 60, 70,000 if I'm lucky. Is that enough?" It's a start. Combined with what I have saved, it might be enough for a down payment if I can find a bank willing to work with me. He looked at her. But I can't ask you to do that. You're not asking, I'm offering. Lena, that's your inheritance, your safety net. What if this doesn't work? What if I can't make the ranch profitable enough to keep up with payments? You'd lose everything. Or we'd build something together. We, he repeated, like he was testing the word. Yeah, we. You and me. Partners. He pulled his hand away, stood up, started pacing. That's crazy. We've been together for what, 2 months? And you want to invest everything you have in my dream? It could be our dream. Could be? Or is? He stopped pacing to look at her. Because there's a difference. If you're doing this because you feel sorry for me, or because you think it's what I need to hear, that's not good enough. This is my life we're talking about. I can't have you resenting me in 5 years because you gave up your security for something you never really wanted. I want you, the rest is details. The rest is a ranch that might fail, a house that needs constant repairs, and a life that looks nothing like what you had in Chicago. I hated what I had in Chicago. You say that now, but Lena, this is real. If we do this, if we combine our money and buy that ranch, we're tied together financially, legally, in every way that matters. And if it falls apart, the ranch or us, it'll destroy both of us. She stood up to face him. So we don't let it fall apart. It's not that simple. Why not? Why does it have to be complicated? I love you. You love me. We both want to build a life here. This is a way to do that. He looked at her for a long moment, something working behind his eyes. You're serious? Completely. You'd sell your house, risk everything, for this. For us. He pulled her into his arms then, holding her so tight she could barely breathe. When he finally loosened his grip enough for her to look up at him, there were tears in his eyes. Nobody's ever... He stopped, started again. Nobody's ever believed in me like this. Then they were all idiots. He laughed, watery and rough, and kissed her. When they broke apart, something had shifted in his expression, determination replacing despair. Okay, let's do it. Let's try. The next week was a blur of phone calls and paperwork. Lena listed her house with a realtor who promised to have it sold within a month. Willow Hollow's housing market was slow, but her place was one of the better properties available. Elias met with banks, presenting his case over and over despite repeated rejections. They keep saying the same thing, he told her one night, frustrated and exhausted. Cattle ranching is a dying industry. Too much risk, not enough return. One guy actually told me I should consider a career change while I'm still young enough. What did you say? Nothing, just left. What am I supposed to say? That I don't care if it's dying? It's the only thing I know how to do? You could say that ranching isn't dying if you're smart about it. Diversify, offer ranch experiences, sell direct to consumers instead of going through distributors. He looked at her. You've been thinking about this. I've been researching. There are ways to make it work. We just have to be creative. We. There was that word again, settling between them like a promise. They spent the next several nights at Lena's kitchen table with her laptop, researching successful small ranches. Most had found ways to supplement traditional cattle sales. Some offered riding lessons or ranch tours. Others had moved into organic or grass-fed beef markets. A few had even started hosting weddings and events. We could do this, Lena said, pointing at a ranch in Montana that had transformed their operation by focusing on sustainable practices and direct sales. Look at their numbers. They're not getting rich, but they're stable, growing, even. It's a lot of work. Everything worth doing is. Elias studied the screen, and Lena watched something shift in his face. Not just hope, but vision. Like he was seeing possibilities he'd never let himself consider before. I'd need help. Someone who understands marketing, business, all the stuff I'm clueless about. Lucky for you, I spent 4 years working in business development. I thought you hated that job. I hated that job because it felt meaningless. This wouldn't be meaningless. He closed the laptop and looked at her. If we do this, it'll consume our lives. Every dollar, every decision, every bit of energy we have will go into making that ranch work. I know. And people will talk. They'll say you're crazy for throwing your life away on something this risky. They'll say I manipulated you into it. Let them talk. Lena, Elias, I'm not some naive kid making an impulsive decision. I'm a grown woman who's thought this through. I want to build something real, with you. If that scares people, that's their problem. He reached across the table and took her hand. Marry me. The words hung in the air between them, so unexpected that Lena thought she'd misheard. What? Marry me. If we're doing this, buying a ranch together, building a life together, we should do it right, all in, no hesitation. Are you seriously proposing to me over ranch finances at my kitchen table? I'm proposing to you because I love you and I can't imagine doing any of this without you. The setting's terrible. I don't have a ring, and this is probably the least romantic proposal in history, but I mean it. Marry me. Lena's heart was racing. This was insane. They'd known each other for barely 3 months, but she looked at him, really looked at him, and saw someone who'd become essential to her existence. Someone she trusted more than she'd ever trusted anyone. Yes. His eyes widened. Yes? Yes, I'll marry you. He stood up so fast he nearly knocked over his chair, came around the table, and pulled her into his arms. They stood there in her kitchen, holding each other and laughing like idiots, and Lena felt more certain of this decision than she'd felt about anything in her entire life. We should tell people, she said eventually. We should probably figure out how we're going to afford a wedding first. Who needs a wedding? Let's just go to the courthouse. He pulled back to look at her. You don't want a real wedding? I want to be married to you. The ceremony is just details. Your friends from Chicago don't care. Most of them stopped calling after I moved back anyway. She touched his face. I don't need a big production. I just need you. Something in his expression softened. Okay, courthouse it is. But I'm still getting you a ring. You don't have to. I want to. Nothing expensive, but something real. Something that tells everyone you're mine and I'm yours. The next morning, they drove to Redfield and found a small jewelry store tucked between a hardware shop and a bakery. The owner was an older man who looked like he'd been selling rings since before Lena was born. Looking for an engagement ring? He asked, eyeing them knowingly. Yeah, Elias said, but our budget's pretty limited. Love's not about the size of the diamond, son. It's about the commitment behind it. He pulled out a tray of simpler rings. These are all quality stones, just smaller, more affordable. Lena tried on several, but nothing felt right until she saw a vintage band tucked in the corner of the case. Simple gold with 3 small diamonds, worn smooth from years of being loved. That one, she said. The jeweler pulled it out. Ah, good eye. Estate sale piece. Lady wore it for 56 years before she passed. Her family wanted it to go to someone who'd appreciate it. Lena slipped it on. It fit perfectly, like it had been waiting for her. This one, she said again, looking at Elias. He checked the price tag and nodded. We'll take it. Driving back to Willow Hollow with the ring on her finger felt surreal. Lena kept looking at it, watching light catch the small diamonds, trying to process that this was real. She was engaged to Elias Boone, and in a few days they'd be married. We should probably tell people before we just show up married, Elias said, reading her thoughts. Who do we tell first? Tom and Sarah. They deserve to know. They drove straight to the Hendricks house. Sarah answered the door with flour on her hands and a surprised smile. Twice in 1 week. What's the occasion? We have news, Elias said. Tom appeared behind Sarah, wiping his hands on a dish towel. Good news or bad news? Depends on your perspective, Lena said. We're buying the ranch. Sarah's eyes went wide. You're what? We're buying it. Together, if you're willing to sell to us. Tom looked at Elias. You got financing? Not yet, but we will. Lena's selling her house, I've got savings, and we're working on a business plan that should convince a bank to take a chance on us. Business plan? Tom sounded skeptical. Lena pulled out the folder they'd prepared. Diversification strategy, target markets, 5-year projections. We're not just continuing what you've been doing, we're modernizing it. Sarah took the folder, flipping through pages with increasing interest. You put this together? Both of us. Elias knows the ranching side, I know the business side. Together we think we can make it profitable. Tom studied them both for a long moment. And you two are getting married, Elias said. Tomorrow, actually, at the courthouse. Tomorrow? Sarah dropped the folder. Tomorrow. Are you insane? Probably. Lena admitted. But we're doing it anyway. Sarah looked at Tom, something passing between them in the silent language of long marriage. Then she turned back to Lena and Elias with tears in her eyes. Then we're selling you the ranch. To hell with putting it on the market, dealing with strangers who don't care about the land or the animals or any of it. You want it? It's yours. Sarah? Tom started. Don't Sarah me, Tom Hendricks. You know as well as I do that Elias has earned this place 10 times over. And if he's found someone willing to fight for it with him, I'm not standing in their way. Tom sighed, but he was smiling. She's right. She's always right. The place is yours. We'll work out fair terms, give you time to get the financing together. Elias looked like he might cry. I don't know what to say. Say you'll take care of it. That's all I need to hear. I will. We will. Sarah pulled them both into a hug. And I'm coming to that courthouse wedding tomorrow whether you want me there or not. We want you there, Lena said, her voice muffled against Sarah's shoulder. They left an hour later with a handshake agreement and Sarah's insistence that she'd make a cake even if the wedding was happening in less than 24 hours. In the truck, Elias was quiet. You okay? Lena asked. Yeah, just processing. Yesterday I thought I was losing everything. Today I'm getting married and buying a ranch. Having second thoughts? About you? Never. About whether I deserve any of this? Constantly. Elias, I know, you keep telling me I'm enough. But it's hard to believe when I've spent my whole life being told I'm not. Lena took his hand. Then I'll keep telling you until you believe it. That night, Lena stayed at her own house. It felt important somehow, this last night of being unmarried, untethered. She called her former roommate in Chicago, partly because she should tell someone from her old life, partly because she needed to hear her own decision out loud. You're getting married? Cassidy's voice went up 3 octaves. To the ranch guy you mentioned like twice? His name is Elias, and yeah, tomorrow. Lena, that's insane. You barely know him. I know him better than I knew Jordan, and I dated him for 2 years. That's different. Jordan was wrong for me. Completely wrong. Elias is right. How can you be sure? Because when I'm with him, I don't feel like I have to be anyone except who I am. He doesn't want to change me or fix me or make me into some version of myself that fits better into his life. He just wants me. Cassidy was quiet for a moment. That's actually really beautiful. Don't sound so surprised. I'm not surprised. I'm just worried. What if it doesn't work out? Then it doesn't work out. But at least I'll have tried for something real instead of settling for something safe that makes me miserable. Is that what you think I did? With Marcus? Lena winced. She'd forgotten that Cassidy had just gotten engaged to her long-term boyfriend who worked in finance and collected sports memorabilia. No, I'm sorry, that came out wrong. No, you're right. Marcus is safe. He's stable and boring, and his idea of a wild Friday night is trying a new restaurant. But that's what I want. Safety, stability, a life I can predict. And I want something I can feel. Then I'm happy for you. Terrified, but happy. They talked for another hour, and by the time Lena hung up, she felt more settled. This was the right choice. Maybe not the smart choice by conventional standards, but the right one for her. She tried to sleep but gave up around 2 in the morning, too wired to stay still. Instead, she packed what she'd take to Elias's house after the wedding, which turned out to be embarrassingly little since most of her stuff was already there. At 6, she gave up on sleep entirely and made coffee. Watched the sun come up. Tried to process that by this time tomorrow, she'd be married. Elias texted at 7. You awake? Couldn't sleep. Me neither. Want breakfast? At your place? Diner. Neutral territory. We should probably eat before getting married. They met at the diner, which was mostly empty at this hour. Marge served them coffee and eggs without comment, though her eyes lingered on Lena's ring. So, Elias said, cutting into his eggs, last chance to back out. Are you trying to give me an out? I'm giving us both an out, just in case. I don't want an out. Do you? No, but I keep thinking about what people are going to say. Since when do you care what people say? Since I'm dragging you down with me. He set down his fork. Lena, once we do this, everyone's going to judge you for my choices, my failures. Everything I'm not will reflect on you. And everything I am reflects on you. That's how marriage works. It's not the same. Why? Because you're the one everyone's already written off? She leaned forward. Elias, I'm choosing you with my eyes open. I know what I'm getting into, and I'd rather be judged for choosing you than praised for choosing someone I don't even like. He smiled a little. You're really something, you know that? So I've been told. They finished breakfast and drove separately to the courthouse. Elias in his truck, Lena in her car, both of them needing that last bit of independence before merging their lives completely. The courthouse was a brick building that had seen better days, with a cracked parking lot and windows that probably hadn't been cleaned since the 90s. Inside, it smelled like old paper and floor wax. Sarah and Tom were already there, along with Old Man Carter, who'd apparently been invited by Sarah because everyone deserves witnesses who actually give a damn. They were standing in the lobby looking slightly out of place, and when Sarah saw Lena, she rushed over with a small bouquet of wildflowers. You need something to hold, Sarah said, pressing them into Lena's hands. Sarah, you didn't have to. Of course I did. It's your wedding day. They checked in with the clerk, paid the fee, and were directed to a small room where a judge would perform the ceremony. The room was aggressively beige with fluorescent lighting that made everyone look slightly ill, but Lena didn't care. She was too busy looking at Elias, who'd worn the same button-down shirt he'd worn on their first date and looked more nervous than she'd ever seen him. The judge was a woman in her 50s who'd probably done this ceremony 1,000 times. She went through the legal requirements efficiently, then got to the important part. Do you, Elias Boone, take Lena Hart to be your lawfully wedded wife? I do. His voice was steady, sure. And do you, Lena Hart, take Elias Boone to be your lawfully wedded husband? Lena looked at him, this quiet man who'd somehow become her entire world, and felt absolutely certain. I do. Then by the power vested in me by the state, I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss. Elias cupped her face in his hands and kissed her, gentle and reverent, and Lena heard Sarah sniffle behind them. Just like that, they were married. The whole thing took maybe 15 minutes. They signed papers, received their marriage certificate, and walked out of the courthouse as husband and wife, while Sarah wiped her eyes and Tom clapped Elias on the shoulder. Congratulations, the older man said gruffly. You got yourself a hell of a woman. I know. They took photos on the courthouse steps. Nothing professional, just Tom and Sarah with their phones, capturing the moment. In every picture, Elias and Lena were smiling like they'd gotten away with something. Because, in a way, they had. They'd chosen each other despite every reason they shouldn't have, every voice telling them it wouldn't work. And now they were married, legally bound, committed in a way that made all the judgment and speculation irrelevant. Sarah insisted they come back to the house for cake, which turned out to be a simple vanilla sheet cake with "Congratulations, Elias and Lena" written in slightly wobbly frosting. They sat around the Hendricks kitchen table eating cake and drinking champagne that Tom had been saving for a special occasion, and it felt right, intimate and real, and theirs. So what now? Sarah asked. Honeymoon? Elias and Lena looked at each other and laughed. We're buying a ranch, Lena said. Honeymoon's going to have to wait. That's practical, Tom said approvingly. That's depressing, Sarah countered. Every couple deserves a honeymoon. We'll take one eventually, Elias said, but right now we've got work to do. They stayed for another hour, then drove back to Elias's house. Their house now, Lena reminded herself. She still had her place to deal with, the sale to finalize, 1,000 details to sort through, but for tonight, they were just going to be married. Elias carried her over the threshold because Sarah had insisted it was tradition, and they were both laughing by the time he set her down in the living room. So, he said, we're married. We are. How do you feel? Terrified, excited, certain. She touched his face. How do you feel? Like I'm the luckiest man alive, and like I'm going to spend every day trying to deserve you. You already deserve me. He kissed her then, and everything else fell away. The judgment, the fear, the uncertainty about what came next. All that mattered was this, him and her, choosing each other, building something real. That night, in the house his father built, Elias loved her with a patience and attention that took her breath away. He was gentle when she needed gentle, fierce when she needed fierce, attuned to every sound and movement in a way that made her feel completely seen. And Lena realized what Willow Hollow had never understood about him. This quiet man they dismissed as simple, as lacking, as not enough. He contained multitudes. He was deliberate where others were careless, present where others were distracted, giving where others took. He wasn't performing strength. He embodied it. Afterward, they lay tangled together in the dark, and Lena traced patterns on his chest. "What are you thinking?" he asked. "That everyone was wrong about you, and I'm going to spend the rest of my life proving it. You don't have to prove anything. I want to. I want them to see what I see." He was quiet for a moment. "And what do you see?" "Everything they're too blind to notice." He pulled her closer, and they fell asleep like that. Two people who'd found each other against all odds, ready to face whatever came next together. Morning came too early and too bright. Lena woke to find Elias already dressed, sitting on the edge of the bed with coffee in hand, staring out the window at land that would soon be theirs. "You're up early," she said, her voice still rough with sleep. "Couldn't stay down. Too much in my head." He turned to look at her, and there was something different in his face. Not worry exactly, but awareness, like he'd crossed a threshold in the night and woken up on the other side of his old life. "We're married." "We are. And we're about to tell all of Willow Hollow that we got married at the courthouse yesterday without inviting anyone." Lena sat up, pulling the sheet around her. "Are you having regrets? About marrying you?" "Not even a little. About the shitstorm that's about to rain down on us?" "Maybe." He set down his coffee. "People are going to lose their minds, Lena. They're going to say we rushed it, that you were desperate, that I trapped you somehow." "Let them say it." "I'm serious. This is going to get ugly. Then it gets ugly. We knew that going in." She reached for his hand. "Elias, I married you because I wanted to, not because I felt pressured or desperate or confused. And if people can't accept that, screw them." He smiled a little at that. "You've gotten tougher since coming back here." "I've gotten clear about what matters. There's a difference." They spent the morning like it was any other day, Elias doing ranch work, Lena making calls about her house sale, both of them pretending the news wouldn't spread like wildfire the second anyone found out. But denial only worked until Sarah called. "Melissa Crawford just stopped by, asking if I knew anything about you and Elias getting married yesterday," Sarah said without preamble. "Please tell me she's making things up." "She's not making it up. You actually got married at the courthouse without telling anyone? We told you. You were there." "I meant without telling the town, Lena. You had to know people would react badly to this." "We didn't do it for the town. We did it for us." Sarah sighed. "I understand that, but honey, you've just given every gossip in Willow Hollow ammunition for months. They're going to tear you apart." "Then they tear us apart. We'll survive it." "Will you?" "Because Elias has dealt with judgment his whole life, but you haven't. Not like this. This is going to be personal and cruel and relentless. I know what I signed up for." "Do you? Really?" Sarah's voice softened. "I'm not trying to scare you. I'm trying to prepare you. Because what's coming isn't just talk. It's going to be isolation, people choosing sides, friendships ending, and most of this town isn't going to choose your side." After they hung up, Lena sat with that warning, trying to steel herself for what was coming. But nothing could have prepared her for how fast it actually hit. By noon, her phone was blowing up with texts. Some congratulatory, most not. Cassidy sent a string of shocked emojis followed by "call me immediately." Riley from the grocery store sent, "OMG, is it true you married Elias? That's so romantic." Mrs. Hemming sent a terse, "We need to talk." And Melissa sent simply, "Well, that didn't take long." Lena ignored most of them and focused on the practical. Her realtor called with good news. There was already an offer on her house, contingent on inspection, but solid. That money, combined with Elias's savings, would give them just enough for a down payment if they could find a bank willing to work with them, which turned out to be harder than expected. Over the next week, they met with 5 different banks. Each meeting followed the same pattern: initial interest, review of their business plan, skepticism about their lack of collateral, and eventual rejection. The reasons varied, but the message was consistent. Too risky, too unconventional, not enough proof of concept. "We're never going to get traditional financing," Elias said after the 5th rejection. They were sitting in his truck outside the bank, both of them exhausted and discouraged. "Every bank looks at a cattle ranch and sees a dying industry. They don't care about our diversification plans or target markets. They just see risk. Then we find non-traditional financing." "Like what?" Private investors. Crowdfunding. Hell, I don't know. A wealthy eccentric who believes in supporting local agriculture. She was half joking, but Elias's expression shifted. Actually, he said slowly, there might be someone. Who? Marcus Webb. He's from Redfield, made a fortune in tech or something, retired young. He's been buying up agricultural properties around the county, supposedly trying to preserve them. And you think he'd invest in us? I think it's worth asking. Worst he can say is no, which we've already heard 5 times this week. They drove to Redfield that afternoon and found Marcus Webb's office in a converted warehouse near the river. Inside was all exposed brick and modern furniture, the kind of deliberately casual wealth that made Lena's teeth ache. A receptionist directed them to a conference room where Marcus was already waiting. He was younger than Lena expected, maybe 40, with gray creeping into his dark hair and the kind of casual confidence that came from never having to worry about money. He shook their hands firmly and gestured for them to sit. Tom Hendricks mentioned you might be reaching out, Marcus said. He speaks highly of you, Elias. Says you're the best ranch hand he's ever had. Tom's generous with his praise. Tom doesn't waste words. If he says you're good, you're good. Marcus leaned back in his chair. So, tell me about this plan of yours. They spent the next hour walking him through everything, the current state of the ranch, their vision for modernization, the market research Lena had done, the financial projections they'd built together. Marcus listened without interrupting, occasionally making notes, his expression unreadable. When they finished, he was quiet for a long moment. This is solid work, he said finally. You've clearly thought it through, but I have to ask, why should I invest in you specifically? There are a dozen ranches in this county I could buy outright if I wanted. Elias glanced at Lena, and she could see him struggling with how to answer, so she jumped in. Because we're not just trying to save a ranch. We're trying to prove something. She hadn't meant to say it, but once the words were out, she committed. Everyone in Willow Hollow has decided that Elias isn't enough, that he's too quiet, too simple, too content with small things, and they've decided that I'm desperate for settling for him. This ranch is our chance to show them they're wrong. Marcus raised an eyebrow. That's honest. It's the truth. Yes, we want to build a successful business, but we also want to build a life that proves you don't have to chase conventional success to matter. That quiet strength and patience and doing things right are worth something. And if you fail, then we fail, Elias said. But we'll fail trying something we believe in instead of living safe lives that make us miserable. Marcus studied them both for a long moment. Then he smiled. I like you two. You've got something most people don't, clarity about what you want and why you want it. He pulled out a folder. Here's what I'm thinking. I'll front you the down payment as a loan, interest-free for the first 2 years. After that, we renegotiate based on how the ranch is performing. You maintain full operational control. I get quarterly updates. If it works, everybody wins. If it doesn't, we figure out next steps. Lena felt her heart racing. You're serious? I don't joke about money, but I do believe in supporting people who are trying to do something real. You two are doing something real. They left Marcus's office an hour later with a handshake deal and the promise of paperwork within the week. In the parking lot, Elias pulled Lena into his arms and held her so tight she could barely breathe. We did it, he said into her hair. We actually did it. We did. I can't believe someone actually believed in us. I can. We're worth believing in. The news about their marriage had spread through Willow Hollow like a virus by the time they got back to town. Lena's phone was full of missed calls and messages, most of them from people she barely knew, asking for details or offering unsolicited opinions. She ignored all of them and focused on the practical work of combining their lives. Her house sold quickly. The inspection turned up only minor issues, and the buyers were eager to close. Within 3 weeks of getting married, Lena had moved the last of her belongings to Elias's place and watched a stranger change the locks on the house where she'd grown up. You okay? Elias asked as they drove away. Yeah, it's just weird. That was my whole childhood, and now it's gone. Not gone, just different. Someone else's childhood now. She liked that framing. Not loss, just change. The paperwork with Marcus went through faster than expected, and by early November they were signing documents that made them the official owners of the Hendricks Ranch. Tom and Sarah threw them a small celebration. Just the 4 of them, plus Old Man Carter and a few others who'd supported them from the start. To new beginnings, Tom said, raising his glass. And to Elias and Lena, who are going to do what Sarah and I never could, make this place thrive. They drank to that, and Lena felt the weight of what they'd taken on settling onto her shoulders. This wasn't just a business venture, it was their entire future. The first few months of running the ranch were brutal. They worked from dawn until well past dark, learning systems Tom had developed over decades, fixing things that had been neglected, making decisions about which cattle to keep and which to sell. Lena dove into the business side, creating a website, developing marketing materials, reaching out to restaurants and farmers markets about direct sales. It was exhausting, and it was exactly what she needed. But Willow Hollow wasn't content to let them work in peace. The criticism came in waves. At the feed store, where the owner made pointed comments about city girls playing rancher. At the grocery store, where Melissa made sure to mention how her husband had just been promoted again. At the diner, where Marge asked loudly if they were still together or if Lena had come to her senses yet. Elias took it in stride. He'd been dealing with this his whole life, but Lena felt it wearing on her, grinding down her confidence one snide comment at a time. "I don't understand why they care so much," she said one night. They were eating dinner on the porch, too tired to bother with the table. "We're not hurting anyone. We're just trying to build something." "You're threatening them," Elias said. "How?" "By proving that their way isn't the only way. That you don't have to chase conventional success to be happy. That someone like me can build something meaningful." He set down his plate. "People need to believe in hierarchies. It makes them feel secure. And we're disrupting that hierarchy by refusing to play by their rules. So they're just going to keep tearing us down? Probably. Until we prove them wrong by succeeding, or until they find someone new to fixate on." That's bleak. That's reality. But reality shifted in unexpected ways. The turning point came in early spring, almost 6 months after they'd taken over the ranch. Lena had been working on their website, trying to find ways to tell their story without sounding desperate, when she got an email from a food blogger out of Kansas City who'd somehow stumbled onto their site. "I love what you're doing," the blogger wrote. "Sustainable ranching, direct sales, preserving traditional methods while adapting to modern markets. Would you be open to an interview? I think my readers would love your story." Lena showed Elias the email. "Should we do it?" "Why not? Maybe some outside perspective would be good." The interview happened over Zoom the following week. The blogger, a woman named Andrea, who'd grown up on a farm and was passionate about sustainable agriculture, asked thoughtful questions about their business model, their philosophy, their vision for the future. She asked about their relationship too, but in a way that felt genuine rather than gossipy. "What made you decide to do this together?" Andrea asked. "Starting a business with a partner is hard. Starting one with a spouse is harder." Lena glanced at Elias, who was sitting just off camera. "Honestly? Because we wanted to build something real, not just a business, but a life that reflected our values, and we couldn't see doing that apart." "What values are those?" "That quiet work matters, that patience is strength, that you don't have to be loud or flashy or constantly achieving to be valuable, that sometimes the best life is the one you build slowly, with intention, without worrying about impressing anyone." Andrea smiled. "That's beautiful and rare." The article went live 2 weeks later, and to Lena's shock, it went viral. Not millions of views, but enough that their website traffic spiked. Their social media gained followers, and they started getting inquiries from people interested in buying their beef, visiting the ranch, learning their methods. Within a month, they had more orders than they could fill. Restaurants in Kansas City and Omaha were calling. Food enthusiasts were asking about ranch tours. A magazine wanted to do a feature on sustainable farming. "This is insane," Lena said, staring at her laptop screen full of emails. "How did this happen?" "You told our story," Elias said, "and apparently people were hungry for it." The success didn't happen overnight. They still worked brutal hours, still struggled with cash flow and equipment failures and all the thousand small disasters that came with ranching. But they were making it work, not just surviving, but actually building something sustainable. And Willow Hollow noticed. It started small, a neighbor asking about their direct sales model, then a farmer from 2 counties over visiting to learn about their grass feeding practices. Then a reporter from the local paper wanting to do a story on Willow Hollow's unexpected agricultural success. The shift in how people treated them was subtle but real. Fewer snide comments, More questions about their methods. People who'd ignored them suddenly wanted to know how they'd done it. Dale Patterson stopped Elias at the hardware store one afternoon. Heard you're doing pretty well with that ranch. We're making it work. Good for you, man. Seriously. I know I gave you shit before, but what you and Lena are building, it's impressive. Elias didn't know what to say to that, so he just nodded and moved on. But later, telling Lena about it, he looked almost bewildered. Did Dale Patterson just compliment me? Sounds like it. That's weird, right? That's people realizing they were wrong about you. But not everyone was ready to admit they'd been wrong. Melissa cornered Lena at the grocery store one afternoon, her expression tight. So you're quite the success story now. The whole town's talking about it. We're just doing our work. Right. Work. That viral article, the magazine features, the social media following, all just work. Melissa's voice dripped with something ugly. Must be nice playing farmer while the rest of us have real responsibilities. Playing farmer? Lena felt her temper rising. Melissa, I work 70-hour weeks. I haven't had a day off in 6 months. What exactly do you think I'm playing at? I think you got lucky. Found a man desperate enough to take you in a business plan that happened to catch someone's attention. But luck runs out, Lena, and when it does, you'll be right back where you started. A failure who came crawling home. Is that what you tell yourself? That anyone who succeeds differently than you just got lucky? Lena stepped closer. Because from where I'm standing, the only failure here is you. You married for status, you live for appearances, and you're so miserable you can't stand seeing someone actually happy. Melissa's face went red. You don't know anything about my life. I know enough. I know you're threatened by the fact that I chose something real over something impressive. And I know that says more about you than it does about me. Lena walked away before Melissa could respond, her hands shaking with adrenaline. She texted Elias. Just told Melissa Crawford where to shove her opinions. Might have burned that bridge permanently. His response came quickly. Good. That bridge was rotted anyway. That night, lying in bed with Elias's arm around her, Lena thought about all the bridges she'd burned since coming back to Willow Hollow. Relationships that had been hollow anyway, friendships built on proximity rather than connection, the approval of people whose opinions didn't actually matter. Do you ever regret it? She asked into the darkness. Choosing me over an easier life? Not once, do you? No. But sometimes I wonder what my life would look like if I'd chosen differently. If I'd stayed in Chicago or come back here and played it safe. What do you think it would look like? She considered that. Probably comfortable, maybe even successful by conventional standards, but hollow, like I was going through motions instead of actually living. And now? Now I'm exhausted and stressed and working harder than I ever have, but I'm alive. Really alive. She turned to face him. You made me alive again. You did that yourself. I just gave you a reason to try. Spring turned to summer, and the ranch continued to thrive. They hired 2 part-time workers to help with the load, expanded their herd, started offering ranch tours on weekends that sold out weeks in advance. Lena developed a subscription program for their beef that had a waiting list. Elias implemented rotational grazing techniques that improved soil health and increased yields. They were written up in 3 more publications. A documentary crew asked to film them for a series on sustainable agriculture. A university invited Elias to speak to their agriculture students about alternative ranching models. They want you to speak, Lena said, showing him the email, at an actual university, to students. That's ridiculous. I'm not qualified to teach anyone anything. You're literally running one of the most successful, sustainable ranches in the region. If that's not qualified, what is? He looked uncomfortable. I don't do public speaking. Then learn. This is important, Elias. You have knowledge people need. You can't keep hiding it just because you're uncomfortable. I'm not hiding. You are. You've spent so long accepting other people's definitions of you that you can't see your own worth. But I see it. Marcus sees it. Everyone who visits this ranch sees it. It's time you saw it too. He was quiet for a long moment. What if I mess it up? Then you mess it up. But at least you tried. So he agreed to the speaking engagement. Lena helped him prepare, running through his presentation a dozen times, making suggestions about what to emphasize, pushing him to own his expertise. And when the day came, she drove with him to the university and sat in the back of the lecture hall while he spoke to 60 agriculture students about sustainable ranching. He was nervous at first, stumbling over words, gripping the podium like it might save him. But as he got into the material, talking about soil health and rotational grazing and the economics of direct sales, he relaxed. His voice grew steadier. His passion became evident. The students asked questions, good ones, hard ones, and Elias answered them all thoughtfully, admitting when he didn't know something, offering to connect them with resources when he couldn't provide answers himself. Afterwards, students clustered around him asking for more information, for internship opportunities, for advice on their own projects. Lena watched from a distance, her chest tight with pride. On the drive home, Elias was quiet. "What are you thinking?" she asked. "That maybe I'm not as limited as I thought I was." "You were never limited. You were just surrounded by people who needed you to be small so they could feel big. And you're not one of those people. I'm someone who needs you to be exactly who you are, which turns out to be pretty extraordinary." He reached across the truck and took her hand. "I love you." "I know. I love you too." By the time their first anniversary approached, the ranch was solidly profitable. They'd paid off their loan to Marcus ahead of schedule. They'd been featured in a national magazine. They'd built something that worked not just financially, but personally, a life that felt true. They celebrated their anniversary quietly, just the two of them on the porch watching the sunset. Lena had made pot roast, the recipe Elias had taught her that first night, the one that had started everything. They ate and talked about the year that had passed, all the ways they'd grown and changed. "Remember when everyone said we wouldn't make it to Christmas?" Lena said. "Clearly we're terrible at following predictions." "Good. Predictions are overrated." She leaned into him. "You know what I realized?" "What?" "This whole year, all the success with the ranch, the recognition, the financial stability, none of it matters as much as this. Sitting here with you, knowing we built something real together. That's because you're not measuring success the way most people do. No, I'm measuring it by whether I'm happy when I wake up, whether I like who I'm becoming, whether the life I'm living reflects the values I actually hold instead of the ones I'm supposed to hold." She looked at him. "And by all those measures, we're wildly successful. Even though we're not rich? Even though we work too hard and never take vacations, and our idea of a fancy dinner is eating on the porch instead of in the kitchen." He smiled. "When you put it that way, we sound almost pathetic." "We sound real. That's better than impressive any day." As fall approached again, bringing them full circle to where they'd started, something interesting happened. People in Willow Hollow stopped talking about them as cautionary tale and started talking about them as example. Young couples asked for advice. Parents pointed them out to their kids as proof that hard work mattered. The narrative shifted from poor Elias and desperate Lena to look what they built. But the change that mattered most came from Elias himself. Lena noticed it in small ways, the way he held himself differently, stood taller, spoke up more readily, the way he stopped apologizing for taking up space, the way he started believing he deserved the success they'd built instead of treating it as lucky accident. "You're different," she told him one evening. They were in the barn checking on a mare about to foal, both of them covered in hay dust. "More confident. Is that good? It's honest. You're finally seeing yourself the way I've always seen you." "And how's that?" "Like someone who was never the problem. The people who couldn't see your worth were the problem." He was quiet for a moment, running his hand along the mare's flank. "I spent so much of my life trying to prove I was enough, making myself smaller, quieter, less demanding so people wouldn't have reasons to criticize me. And it never worked. They criticized me anyway. Because some people need someone to look down on to feel okay about themselves. Yeah, but I don't have to be that person anymore." He looked at her. "You taught me that by choosing me so clearly, so loudly, without apology. You showed me that my worth isn't determined by other people's opinions. Your worth was always there. I just helped you see it." The mare shifted, and Elias refocused on her. "She's close. We should probably stay with her." They spent the night in the barn, taking turns napping while the mare labored. Just before dawn, a foal was born, healthy and strong, struggling to its feet within minutes. They watched it nurse for the first time, and Lena felt something settle in her chest. This was it. This was the life she'd been searching for without knowing it. Not impressive or flashy or impressive to anyone scrolling past on social media. Just real. Just good. just theirs. "I'm glad I came back," she said as they walked back to the house in early morning light. "To Willow Hollow?" "To you, to this, to a life that makes sense instead of one that looks good from the outside. Even though it was hard, especially because it was hard, easy things don't change you. They just let you keep being whoever you already were." She took his hand. "You changed me, made me better, made me braver. You were always brave, you just needed a reason to remember it." Inside, they showered and made coffee and started another day of work that would blend into all the other days of work stretching ahead of them. But those days didn't feel monotonous. They felt meaningful. By their second anniversary, the ranch had expanded again. They'd added chickens, started selling eggs at the farmer's market, developed a small agritourism program that brought in steady revenue. They'd been featured in another documentary, this one about young people revitalizing rural communities. But the recognition that mattered most came from an unexpected source. Elias's former guidance counselor, the one who'd suggested college all those years ago, reached out asking if he'd be willing to speak at the high school's career day. When Elias hesitated, Lena pushed him. "This is important. These kids need to see that success comes in different forms." "I'm not sure I'm the right person." "You're exactly the right person. You're proof that you don't have to leave home or chase conventional achievements to build something meaningful." So he agreed. And on a Tuesday afternoon in October, Elias Boone stood in front of a classroom of high school students and told them his story. He talked about being written off as simple, as lacking, as not enough, about accepting those labels for years until he met someone who saw him differently, about building a business that reflected his values instead of chasing someone else's definition of success. "I'm not going to tell you that following your passion is easy," he said. "It's not. It's hard work, constant uncertainty, and people questioning your choices every step of the way. But I will tell you that living a life that feels true to who you are is worth more than any amount of conventional success." The students asked questions, some skeptical, some genuinely curious. One kid in the back, quiet, uncomfortable in his own skin, raised his hand tentatively. "What if you're not good at anything that matters?" Elias recognized himself in that question immediately. "What makes you think you're not good at anything?" "I don't know. I'm not smart like the kids who get into good colleges. I'm not athletic. I don't have any special talents." "What do you like doing?" The kid shrugged. "Working on cars, I guess. Fixing things. That's a skill that matters. That's something people need. Don't discount it just because it's not flashy or impressive to people who don't understand its value." Elias leaned forward. "The world needs people who can fix things, who can work with their hands, who can take something broken and make it whole. That's not less valuable than any other skill. It's just different." The kid nodded and Lena saw something shift in his expression. Recognition, maybe. Or just the beginning of believing he might be worth something after all. After the presentation, the guidance counselor pulled Elias aside. "Thank you for doing this. These kids needed to hear that message." "I'm not sure I said anything useful." "You told them the truth, that there's more than one path to a meaningful life. That's invaluable." Driving home, Elias was quiet. Lena let him sit with whatever he was processing, knowing he'd talk when he was ready. Finally, he said, "I think I just became the person I needed when I was that age." "What do you mean?" "Someone who could have told me that being quiet and working with my hands and wanting a simple life didn't make me less than anyone else, that those things were enough." He glanced at her. "You gave me that. The confidence to believe I mattered, even when everyone said I didn't." "You always mattered. I just reminded you." "No, you changed how I saw myself. That's different. That's transformative." That night, in the house they now truly owned, Elias made love to her with an intensity that took her breath away. Not rushed or desperate, but deliberate and sure. Like he was claiming something he'd finally allowed himself to believe he deserved. Afterward, lying tangled together in the dark, Lena thought about transformation. Not the kind that came from leaving everything behind and starting over, but the kind that came from choosing one person, one place, one life, and committing to it fully. From letting someone see you clearly enough to reflect back your own worth. "What are you thinking about?" Elias asked, his voice rough with sleep. "How everyone was wrong about us. About you. About what makes a life worth living. They're still talking about us, you know. I heard Mrs. Hemming tell someone at the feed store that she always knew we'd make it." Lena laughed. She absolutely did not say that. Swear to you, she's rewriting history to make herself look prescient. Let her. Doesn't change what actually happened. No, it doesn't. They fell asleep like that, and Lena dreamed of fields and horses and a life that looked nothing like what she'd imagined but felt exactly right. The years that followed weren't easy. They had hard seasons, financial scares, equipment failures that cost more than they could easily afford. They fought sometimes about money, about priorities, about whether they were working too hard or not hard enough. They weren't perfect people living a perfect life, but they were real people building a real life. And that mattered. 5 years after that courthouse wedding, Lena stood on the porch of the house Elias's father had built and watched her husband work with a group of interns they'd started hosting every summer. He was patient with them, teaching them the same way Tom had taught him, passing on knowledge that mattered. Sarah found her there, balancing 2 glasses of lemonade. Tom had passed the previous winter peacefully in his sleep, and Sarah had been spending more time at the ranch since. Not to work, just to be near the land she'd loved for so long. "You look thoughtful," Sarah said, handing her a glass. "Just appreciating what we built." "You should be proud. You two took something everyone said was dying and made it thrive." "We got lucky." "No. You worked your asses off and refused to give up. That's not luck. That's grit." Sarah took a sip of her lemonade. "You know what Tom said before he died?" "What?" "That watching you and Elias build this place gave him hope for the future. That maybe all the things people said were dying, small towns, family ranches, quiet lives lived with intention, maybe they weren't dying at all, just transforming." Lena felt tears prick her eyes. "I wish I'd told him how much he meant to us." "He knew. Trust me, he knew." That evening, Lena and Elias sat on the porch watching the sunset like they did most evenings. The interns had left, the work was done, and the land stretched out before them quiet and settled. "Do you ever think about what your life would be like if I hadn't come back?" Lena asked. "Sometimes. Probably still working for someone else, still being overlooked, still accepting other people's definitions of me. That makes me sad." "Don't be sad. You came back. That's what matters." "But what if I hadn't?" He turned to look at her. "Then I'd still be the person Willow Hollow thought I was instead of the person I actually am. You didn't just change my circumstances, Lena. You changed how I see myself. That's the real gift. You did the same for me. Made me brave enough to choose something real over something impressive. We saved each other." "Yeah, I think we did." The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink and purple. Somewhere in the distance, cattle lowed, a horse whinnied, the sounds of a life being lived fully and honestly. Years later, when people asked Lena about her story, about leaving the city and coming home and choosing the man everyone had written off, she'd tell them the truth, that real strength doesn't announce itself. It doesn't need to. It just shows up every day, doing the work, being present, choosing what matters over what looks good. That the quietest person in a room is often the one who has the most to say, if anyone bothers to listen. That love isn't about finding someone perfect. It's about finding someone real and choosing them completely, even when that choice is hard. That a life built slowly with intention, without worrying about impressing anyone, can be more valuable than any amount of conventional success. And that sometimes the person everyone dismisses as not enough is actually everything you need. Elias Boone never became famous. He never got rich or powerful or recognized by anyone who mattered in conventional terms. But he built a life that meant something. He became the person that quiet kid in his high school class needed to see. He proved that you don't have to be loud or ambitious or constantly achieving to be valuable. He just had to be himself, fully, honestly, without apology. And that turned out to be more than enough. It turned out to be everything.